and that there is enormous tactical voting on behalf of those two parties. Where Liberal Democrats don't think they have a chance, they're going Labour. Where Labour people think they don't have a chance, they're going Liberal Democrat. And the Conservatives are simply being squeezed inexorably between these two forces, and they are down to, and will remain at, their worst figure in this century by a wide margin.
The result of the count in Dumfries we have, the Labour gain there, 16% swing, taking the seat from Struan Stevenson. Third safest seat in Scotland. And Romford, a Labour gain. Sir Michael Newbert out there. This was a classic stronghold of the Conservative Party in Essex. It's been taken by Eileen Gordon. Pudsey, Peter Bone defeated there, new Tory candidate. And a swing of 13% against him. The seat's taken by Paul Truswell. Bedford, Robert Blackman, the candidate there, defeated on a swing of 13%. Again, another huge swing. So the state of the parties, let's just have a look at that. It's 2 o'clock, just after, 215 results in, 190 for Labour, up 37, Conservatives down 43, on 10, Liberal Democrats 9, up 5, and the National Parties up 1. A sensational result for Labour, and this is how it's been coming through to us here in the studio. And up at Sedgefield Labour Club in Trimdon, Tony Blair has arrived. Can't see him. I think they're waiting for him. Well, when he arrives there, we'll get pictures of it. The surprising sort of hat you normally see at Conservative Party clubs. But Labour's had the bulldog in the campaign, and they've wrapped themselves in the Union flag, and they can wear the Union Jack on their hats. Paddy Ashdown joins us now from Yeovil, the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Mr. Ashdown, it looks as though you're heading for something like 50 seats at the moment on a 17% vote, which is a bit less than your popular vote last time. It means your vote has been, in your words, effectively used, doesn't it?
Well, I don't make predictions until the results are known, and then they're not predictions, David. As you know, I dislike predictions. So let's wait and see what the result is. But all the signs we're seeing is that there is a comprehensive endorsement from people in the country, especially in the seats that we've won, for the messages that we've put in what was a positive campaign which centred on two key things: investment in education and tackling the crisis in the health service. And we'll use every vote that people have armed us with, and the mandate they've given us, and the seats that we've won, to ensure that in the next Parliament we push that agenda forward, as no other party will.
Mr. Ashdown, I'll come back to you in a moment. We've just got a declaration coming through. If you could stay with us for a second.
I'm afraid the referendum party candidates, 1,337. Neville Arthur Kenyon, Liberal Democrat, 4,536. And I hereby declare David Michael Chater to be elected a Member of Parliament for the Bury North constituency.
So, Bury North, a Labour gain. A defeat of Alistair Burt. So, Mr. Ashdown, you were saying in your speech when you had the count that you look to the Liberal Democrats to influence the changes in the nature of politics and the Constitution and all that. There's going to be obviously a hefty Labour majority. Do you think that Tony Blair will still stand by that commitment he gave to try and bring other parties in on the left into a sort of new cooperative agreement or some such?
Well, the Liberal Democrats are not on the left, Mr. Dimbleby, as you well know. We're a radical party, but we're an independent and distinctive one. If Mr. Blair is interested, as I believe he is, in a more pluralist approach to politics, that's a very, very good thing. We have to break out of the destructive tribalism in British politics, and I've been committed to that for 5 or 6 years now, and the strength of the Liberal Democrats will reinforce that process if Mr. Blair wishes to pursue it. As to the constitutional change, he's made an agreement. I know him to be an honourable man. I'm sure that agreement will be fulfilled. What I'm clear about is that the Liberal Democrats now are a force that guarantees the modernisation of our constitution in the next 3 or 4 years, and for that reason I believe that the next Parliament will indeed be a momentous and historical one.
How do you mean guarantees?
Well, if we get the more seats that we have, the more likely we will be able to buttress and push forward that process.
Of a reform to proportional representation?
No, not just proportional representation. You know as well as I that there's a constitutional package. It includes such things as a Bill of Rights, as a Freedom of Information Act, as a measure of sensible devolution in this country. It means overhauling our political system, and that is very important. All politicians ought to recognise that they have now lost the trust of the British people in a way that we have not seen before, and that's a very major problem for our democracy. We must now begin to address how it is we rebuild a link between government and governed in this country in order to rebuild that trust. Constitutional change, the modernisation of our system of government, investment in education and investment in health, and a clear and honest position on taxation is all part of that process.
Isn't it a difficulty for you that you get this strength, this new strength in the House of Commons, something like 2.5 or maybe 3 times what you had before, at the very moment that Labour roars ahead and gets a vast majority for itself, thus diminishing any influence you may have, once again?
I doubt that, but let's wait and see how the results play out, and in particular how the next Parliament is made up. Again, we can spend a lot of time making predictions about the future. Tomorrow morning is good enough time for that.
Mr. Ashdown, thank you very much. John Sopel joins us now from Tory party headquarters. John.
David, I've just been handed a news release from the Tory Reform Group, who represent the left of the party, and a sign of the bloodbath that perhaps is to come in the Conservative Party. Let me just read you a section of it. The election defeat that the Conservative Party experienced was wholly unnecessary. It was brought about by the rank treachery of the Tory right. They, ably assisted by the newspapers that back them, have run a vile campaign of hatred against John Major and his administration, almost from the moment of the sensational victory of 1992. And it goes on, those who cheered the defeat of Chris Patten at Lord McAlpine's home in 92 are all too typical of those on the right of the Conservative Party who've since worked tirelessly to remove John Major and to destroy the Tory party. Their actions are unforgivable. Now, this is being handed out here at Conservative HQ. The press releases are already being started to circulate from the left. No doubt we'll be hearing from the right wing of the party as well. But I think the omens from this sort of thing are not very good for the party.
Party of brotherly love. Thanks very much, John. Let's go down to Torbay, because we have the result, we think, after many recounts, I'm not quite sure how many, coming through from Torbay. This was a Liberal Democrat challenge to Rupert Allison, the sitting MP. It looks like a scene from South Pacific at the count at Torbay. Expect them to break into song.
Okay. As returning officer for the Torbay constituency, I hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate is as follows. Allison Rupert William Simon, the Conservative Party candidate, 21,082. Booth Graham Harry, the UK Independence Party candidate.
We're going to Harrogate now, Norman Lamont's result.
18,322.
Lamont, former Chancellor of the Exchequer,
Willis,
looking very sombre there.
George Philip, known as Phil Willis, Liberal Democrat, 24,000.
Victory in Harrogate and Knaresborough.
Quiet. Could I, please, let me finish reading the result. 24,558.
And Rupert Allison has
I
lost
hereby
Torbay to the Liberal
declare that
Democrats,
the
so that's a
undermentioned
double
person,
victory for the Liberal
Phil Willis,
Democrats.
has been duly elected to serve as the member for the said constituency.
Phil Willis takes it, and a third gain there. So Harrogate and Knaresborough, Norman Lamont, is in second place to Phil Willis, the Liberal Democrat, leader of Harrogate Council.
At this election,
Majority of 6,000 turning round and 9,000 majority for the Conservatives last time round.
voting for more than one candidate, 19. Writing or marked by which a voter could be identified, 5. And unmarked or void.
Well, as they go on with the count there, in a moment we should be able to see the result from Torbay,
52 ballot papers rejected.
which was the Liberal Democrat gain
Thank you.
by Rupert Allison. There you are, 12 votes, majority. Tayside North taken by the Scottish National Party. So Torbay, 12 votes after recounts. Rupert Allison, Nigel West, the writer, is defeated there. And the Liberal Democrats take Torbay. It's where they had their eve of poll campaigning speech just the day before yesterday. Kenneth Clarke in Rushcliffe pondering these results, knowing that some of the challengers for the leadership are in trouble. Michael Portillo may well be in trouble in Enfield. Edinburgh Pentlands.
4511. James Alfred Sibbett, Referendum Party candidate, 526. 526. Gavin Steele-Strang, the Scottish Labour Party
This is
candidate.
Gavin Strang's result. These are being declared in the same place. Gavin Strang, the Shadow Agriculture Minister, with his safish seat there. We're still waiting for Malcolm Rifkin's result to come through.
Ward, Scottish Conservative and Unionist candidate.
So we join Lance Price now in Enfield to hear how things are going there. This running story, Lance.
Yes, well, we've had some extraordinary results tonight, as we've been hearing, but I think we are about to have perhaps the most extraordinary. It looks from all the indications that we are hearing from all the parties that Michael Portillo has lost his seat here at Enfield Southgate. We're expecting to get the result perhaps in the next 10 to 15 minutes. But as I say, all the indications so far is that one of the leading contenders for the leadership of the Conservative Party in the event of John Major's resignation has lost his seat.
Lance, thanks very much. Robin Oakley, if Michael Portillo is really out, what does that do for the leadership?
Well, it's a devastating blow for the Tory right, and particularly for those on the Tory right who don't want to see John Redwood get the job after John Major. Obviously, this increases John Redwood's chances of being the standard bearer of the right in any Tory leadership contest. I think it makes it much more likely now that William Hague will stand, a 36-year-old candidate who is seen as a man of the right, but who doesn't upset the left in the way that Redwood and Portillo do.
Does it make it easier for Kenneth Clarke? I'm keeping an eye on Sedgefield Labour just to see if Tony Blair arrives there. Does it make it easier for Kenneth Clarke or for Michael Heseltine or those on the left that Portillo's out of the running, if he is out of the running?
I think the degree of the Conservative defeat, the rout it is now becoming, makes the Tories inclined to look much harder at the men of experience like Michael Heseltine and Kenneth Clarke, and perhaps to pay a little bit less attention to the ideological bent of some of their candidates.
But
They're
what
not
do you
gonna
make
have
of
such an
this?
easy
What do you
choice
make
on
of
those
this?
terms.
What do you make of this thing that John Sopel read out from the Tory Reform Group? I mean, it sounds as though the party's imploding or exploding at the moment.
That's a sign of the bitterness to come. I mean, the Tory Reform Group do not speak for all that many Conservatives, but that is a clear sign of just how much bloodletting we might see and how rough it could get.
Let me just have a word with William Hague, who's at Conservative Party headquarters. Mr. Hague, what do you make of this Tory Reform Group pamphlet that's going around right inside the headquarters where you are at the moment, accusing people in the party of treachery?
Actually, I haven't seen it going around here in
You
the
haven't seen
headquarters,
it?
although somebody has picked it up from somewhere. But I don't think most members of the Conservative Party would make much of that. I think they would agree that what the party will need is a period of cool and calm reflection that should take at least several months
Well, what John
in order to learn the lessons of what has happened tonight.
What John Sopel was reading out to us suggests that there are people in the Conservative Party who don't feel like that at all and feel that blame should be attributed immediately and something done about it. There should be a bloodletting.
Well, of course there will always be people with hard feelings after a result like the one that we are seeing at the moment that seems to be taking shape across the country. But I think the sensible course, and the course that the vast majority of people in the Conservative Party will want to follow, is one of very cool and calm reflection, of making sure that lessons are learned, but also making sure we don't lose sight of the fact that we are very proud of what we have achieved in this country. We don't stop being proud of it if it looks like we are losing an election.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for joining us again. Tony Blair not arrived yet. Peter, while we're waiting
David,
for
yes,
this
indeed.
moment.
Now, just look at this extraordinary picture of the country. Here it is, with all these forecast gains for Labour in the Midlands. Not a single Tory forecast for Wales, just one Conservative seat in Scotland, Gordon up there forecast. So the situation now in Wales is that Anthony Eden, with half the seats in Wales back in 55, had been followed by his successors with a handful of seats there, but John Major now with just no seats in Wales forecast, David.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. We've got a declaration in Glasgow, Galloway and Upper Nisdale. Ian Lang's seat. Ian Lang, 2,400 majority here. He was Secretary of State for Scotland. Now he's Trade and Industry
I'm now about
Secretary.
to announce the result for
And it's,
the Galloway and Upper
top
Nisdale
Scottish National
constituency.
Party target.
I, James Maguire Smith, being the returning officer for the parliamentary election in Galloway and Upper Nisdale, hereby give notice that the total number of votes polled for each candidate in the Galloway and Upper Nisdale constituency was as follows. Katie Clark, the Scottish Labour Party candidate, 6,861. Katie Clark, the Scottish Labour Party candidate, 6,861. 6-8. Mr. Flynn, could I ask you to assist those who have not been listening and do not wish to be courteous? Katie Clark, the Scottish Labour Party candidate, 6,861. 6861. Alan Kennedy, the Referendum Party, 428. 428. Ian Lang, Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party candidate, 12,825. 12825. John Ewan McKercher, Scottish Liberal Democrat, 2,700. 2700. Alistair Morgan, Scottish National Party, 18,000. Alistair Morgan, Scottish National Party, 18,449. 18449. Joseph Smith, UK
Alex Salmond watching
Independence
this
Party,
result from his county at
189.
Banffin-Buchan as the
189.
SNP take
Rob Wood, Independent,
Galloway and Upper
566,
Nisdale, and Ian Lang,
566.
another cabinet
I
minister
hereby
to fall,
declare
is
that
defeated
Alison Neil Morgan
with a
has been duly
majority
elected to serve
of
as a Member of Parliament for
5,600.
Galloway and Upper
The
Nisdale
Scottish National Party take that seat. Tony Blair is now speaking at the Labour Club in Sedgefield.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much indeed. And, well, you know me, I'm never complacent, but no, it's looking very good all around the country. I just want to say a few things to you on this evening that is more moving and more important, certainly, than any of my life before. I want to say to you, first of all, thank you, because it's you people here who've been my foundation and support all the way through my political career. And you've given me the chance to lead my party, and I hope now to lead my country. Thank you.
This is Tony Blair speaking at the Sedgefield Labour Club at this moment.
And you know, it was here in this constituency that we created New Labour. Here that we recognised how important it was that we took the values of the Labour Party, the basic beliefs in justice and progress and a fair deal for ordinary people, in a sense of community and society, and we said, these are the values of the Labour Party, but we've got to make them live and breathe again for the modern world. And we did it. And we built a party here of which we're proud. Proud because we knew that all over this country there were people that were crying out for a sensible, mainstream, moderate alternative to the Conservative Party. A party they could support and look up to and respect. A party that would set about changing the things in British society that people know need changing. Decent schools for all our children, not just a few. A national health service rebuilt as the pride of the nation again. Our young people given hope, our elderly security in their old age, a nation reborn and renewed. That is what New Labour was always about. Not just about changing the Labour Party, but changing it for a purpose so that we could make the changes in our country that we know need to be made. That is one reason why tonight we are content and happy. Because we know that we have the courage to build a new Labour Party capable of taking this country through to the new millennium. But there is a second reason too, and a reason that I am very conscious of. That support that's been given to us tonight has been given to us as a new Labour Party, and it's been given to us so that we can bring our country together, so that we can unify it, so that we can put an end to divisions, so that we can build one country, one nation, one society, where every person gets a chance and a stake in it, where no one is left out. That is the message that we have taken round this country, and that is the message the country has heard and celebrated.
Tony Blair, then, speaking at Sedgefield Labour Party.
And it's a great thing, is it not, to think of people from all walks of life, all classes, all sections of society coming behind a party that wants to unify this country. A party that will govern this country, not on the basis of sectional interests or vested interests, not on the basis of paying off this deal or that deal, but on the basis of bringing this country together and giving it unity and purpose for the future. We can do that now. And I learned those simple lessons and values here in this constituency. It's a strange thing to think as I look around this room and I see so many faces that I've known over all the years. So much good and decent and loyal support. And through all those bad and sad times in the Labour Party when we were trying to build this party into a modern party of the future, and sometimes it seemed difficult to do, but we persevered. And I was able to persevere because of the strength that you gave me. This is the foundation of my political life and career here in this constituency. And I cannot tell you what pleasure and pride it gives me to see so many people here whose loyal support and whose basic decency have made me what I am today. And my greatest pleasure will be to repay the trust that you've put in me. I believe in you, and I believe that you represent all the best in this country. And the greatest pride I could ever have is to repay that trust 1,000-fold.
Tony Blair, then, with his Labour Party supporters in Sedgefield, in his constituency, the launch pad for his bid for the leadership, and now his arrival at the top job at number 10, with the largest Labour majority ever, with his old friend and mentor, John Burton, who got him the seat in the first place. Now, we've had some more results in. South London seats which have gone to Labour. Wimbledon has been gained on a swing of 18%. Charles Goodson Wick, the doctor who went out to the Gulf War, defeated as the Conservative candidate there. Lady Olga Maitland, defeated in Sutton and Cheam on a swing. No swing. Liberal Democrat takes that seat. Liberal Democrats gain in Sutton and Cheam. They had that seat before, of course, way back in a by-election. And Lady Olga Maitland defeated there. And a Liberal Democrat gain in Carshalton and Wallington. 2,000 majority. Nigel Foreman out. Liberal Democrats go in. At Sedgefield, in the Labour Club, there's applause for Tony Blair and a bit of singing. Rather thin singing, I think, there. Let's go back to the results. A Labour gain in Middlesbrough South and Cleveland East on an 11% swing. Ashok Kumar, who won it in a by-election, then lost it in the general election to Michael Bates, wins it back. Gloucester, the seat that Labour made such a fuss about, which now seems to be just a minor seat in the mass of victories that Labour have scored. This is the one they went to at the very beginning, and they went to at the very end, saying it was the key seat for them, 58th in their target. It needed a swing of 4.36%, a paltry figure compared with the 11% they've actually got in Gloucester. Douglas French out, and Tessa Kingham takes the seat, a journalist, former teacher and Oxfam worker. Croydon Central is a Labour gain. David Congdon loses Croydon Central, swing of 15%. Geraint Davis takes it. Croydon North, a Labour gain. Malcolm Wicks takes that on a 19% swing. He had the seat before, wins it back. And the SNP gain in Tayside North. Bill Walker, staunch figure in the House of Commons from Scotland, Conservative, right-winger, and he's defeated there a Eurosceptic and Vice Chairman of the Scottish Conservative Party. Shrewsbury and Atcham, Labour gain. Seat taken by Paul Marsden, comes up from third place. Liberal Democrats were in second place and they fall a little bit. Conservatives down, and a swing from Conservative to Labour of 11% in Shrewsbury and Atcham. So the picture of the United Kingdom is changing fast as we speak, isn't it, Peter?
Tony Blair has simply transformed the landscape. Even when you go back to the last Labour government of 1974, that is what Harold Wilson achieved in the October 74 election. You see the crescent of red there and quite a lot of dotted seats for Labour outside London, the home counties and so on. Now that changed, of course. By 1983, at the high watermark of Thatcherism, there were only 2 Labour seats outside London in the south of the whole of England. Look how blue that map was. Here's how it had changed. The Tories had come back. The Tories had completely swept to power, sweeping the Labour Party almost out of it, and the Liberal Democrats, true, did have 23 seats, but look how few other opposition seats there are there. Now, here we have the new pattern of colour on the country now. In 1997, it's completely transformed. I'm going to flash the changes since 1983 there, so that you can see how Labour's comeback has been so much more spectacular than simply to return to October 74. This is Labour's best result ever. We've seen nothing like this in British history. And the Liberal Democrats, too, the best results since the 1930s, but Labour here with absolutely record-breaking success all over the country, in the home counties, in Surrey, down to the south coast there. The Midlands and the North almost entirely red, and of course Scotland now a huge Labour stronghold with only 1 Tory seat visible up there in the northeast. David.
Thanks, Peter. Well, Emma Udwin is at Cambridgeshire North West, and I gather Dr. Brian Mawhinney, chairman of the party, has gone to ground rather.
Well, yes. His own result isn't expected for a long time, but Dr. Mawhinney is in the building. We understand he's spending a lot of time on the phone. He's talked to Central Office and spoken to John Major this evening, I understand, but it is being made clear to us he isn't going to want to talk to the media probably this evening. Now, obviously, among his own friends, there's a deep concern that he's going to be made the scapegoat for these extraordinary results that we're seeing. And they're saying that that would be very unfair, because One thing that has been clear throughout the campaign is that he has not had sole control of the campaign strategy. He's been chairing meetings at Conservative Central Office with Viscount Cranborne from Number 10 and the Deputy Prime Minister Michael Heseltine there, and he's had to share the responsibility with them, and therefore his friends say he must share the blame with them as well. And there has been one really distinctive thing about the way he's run the campaign, which is that he's impressed on Central Office that they have to run a campaign that the Prime Minister would be happy with. Now, what that's meant in practice is that where some people would have liked more direct, more personal attacks on Tony Blair, John Major wasn't happy with that, thought it was inappropriate to his personality and to his office as Prime Minister, and Dr. Mulwiney has backed him in that. Similarly, the Prime Minister has had his head over Europe. Now, some may say a different party chairman would have stood up to John Major and said, "I'm sorry, Prime Minister, this isn't working." But what his friends say is that when the aftermath is examined, people are going to have to look at the last 5 years, not just the last 5 weeks.
But surely, Emma, this is not a campaign that's gone astray. This is something much deeper than that, a result on this scale. I mean, he'll be saved by that, won't he? That, you know, no campaign could prevent a complete wipeout of a party.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think what his friends are saying is you're going to have to look a lot further back. You're going to have to look at the divisions, as we've heard many people mentioning on this programme. You're going to have to look at the way the party is handling the issue of Europe. But the fact of the matter is the party of the chairman has ultimate responsibility for a campaign, and that's something that Dr. Mulwiney accepted right at the outset. Goes with the territory, as one of his friends said to me today.
Emma, thanks very much indeed. Let's go to Brent North, where, judging by his face, Dr. Rhodes Boyson has lost his seat.
Labour poll 3,104.
Liberal
And
Democrat.
that Barry Strachan Gardner has been duly elected to serve as a member of the said constituency.
So Barry Gardner takes the seat from Sir Rhodes Boyson. Sir Rhodes Boyson, who's been the MP here since 1974, is defeated. And we go up to Rushcliffe, where Kenneth Clarke is defending his seat,
for each
the Chancellor of the
candidate
Exchequer.
at the said election is as follows. Boot Samuel, Liberal Democrat, 8,851. Chad Salary Catherine, the Referendum Party candidate, 2,682. I'll repeat that, 2,682. Clarke Kenneth Harry, the Conservative Party candidate, 27,558. Misiewska Anna, Natural Law Party, 115. Moore Joseph Duncan, UK Independence Party, 403. Pettit Jocelyn, the Labour Party candidate, 22,503. And I do hereby declare, I'll repeat that, and I do hereby declare that the said Kenneth Harry Clarke is duly elected Member of Parliament for the said constituency. Thank you.
Kenneth Clarke holds his seat, his majority way down, a swing against him of 11%. 11.5, we showed as 12.
Well, Mr. Returning Officer, ladies and gentlemen, firstly I'm very grateful to the people of Rushcliffe for returning me to represent them again, which is a privilege I've had for 27 years, and I look forward to representing all of them to the best of my ability for another Parliament which looks set to go well into the next century. For 18 of those years I've had the pleasure of serving in government in many posts as a much reshuffled career. I'm extremely proud of what we've achieved in that 18 years, and I believe we can look back on a period of office in which we have transformed this country to make it a much more successful, self-confident and proud state. And I trust in the national interest that those who are now going to take responsibility for our affairs take good care of them and achieve success themselves. I particularly hope that in terms of jobs and prosperity and growth of the economy, we do well. I also hope we continue to improve the quality of our public services and demonstrate to the world that the quality of life in this country is one of the finest that you can find anywhere. And I hope they enhance what we have achieved over our period of office. On this occasion, when we are...
Edinburgh West, we have the declaration here. Edinburgh West, Lord James Douglas Hamilton for the Conservatives has been defeated here. The Liberal Democrats have taken the seat.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the people involved in running the election for the hard work they have put in.
It looks very much as though there won't be any Tories in Scotland at all, Peter. Nobody north of Hadrian's Wall for the Tory party.
Right, the map was very blue before. There it is in 1992, the last Parliament. Quite a few Tories there, 11 last time, at least it seems a lot when you think of it, although 72 altogether, not very many. But there we have the map of Scotland as forecast now, with not a sign of blue anywhere. The SNP taking seats from the Tories, the Labour Party taking seats from the Tories. We reckon it's 56 Labour. The 50 they had before was the highest ever in history. Now they're on 56. They almost get all the seats in Scotland. Up 6. Liberal Democrats up 2. The SNP 6 up 9. The Tories down 11. So here we have the story of Scotland then over the last 40 years or so. Anthony Eden with 36 of Scotland's MPs, roughly half of them. Going down to Margaret Thatcher, 10, the lowest ever up to now. John Major, 11 last time. And now the Tories with no MPs in Scotland at all. Records being created everywhere. Just look at this. There's the Duke of Wellington with the lowest Conservative vote in history, 29.4% up to now. 1832, the Duke of Wellington led his party to defeat just after the Great Reform Bill. Ted Heath was the worst this century with 36.7% of the vote in October 1974. And here we have John Major now with 32.1%. A little bit better than the Duke of Wellington, but still worse than people like the Earl of Derby in the mid-50s in the last century. David.
But the Scottish Tories should vote for devolution, and at least they'll get a presence in the Edinburgh Parliament, having been wiped out in Westminster. Wiped out in the Westminster
Indeed.
Parliament.
With some share of the vote in Scotland, they would get some MPs in the
what's their
Parliament.
share? What's their actual share of the vote in Scotland?
Very low, at about sort of 17%.
Yeah, so it would give, under PR, it would give them a seat.
Of course.
Let's join Jane Frankie in Scotland. Jane.
Well, I think there's as much as shock here as there is elsewhere, David, because these have been major scalps, major shocks. Top name so far, of course, Scottish Secretary Michael Forsyth and the President of the Board of Trade, Ian Lang. Now, Michael Forsyth was famous for his Houdini act in the past because he's escaped defeat so often, but it failed him tonight, and Stirling is now a Labour seat. So too is Ayr a Labour seat. That's the first time Ayr ever has been a Labour seat. Eastwood perhaps was the one that gave people up here the most shock, because Eastwood is always perhaps somewhat laughingly known as a little bit of Tory England in Scotland. It was undoubtedly the safest seat in Scotland, one of the safest in Britain altogether, and it's gone to the Labour Party. Aberdeen South again has also gone to Labour. The Scottish Office Minister Raymond Robertson losing there, and Dumfries, the country's third safest seat, is now Labour. And they've lost Aberdeenshire West and Kincardineshire to the Liberal Democrats, Perth and Tayside North, of course, to the SNP, and Galloway as well. At the moment, we're waiting for one more Tory seat to declare up here. That's Malcolm Rifkin's seat in Edinburgh Pentlands, the Foreign Secretary's seat. At the moment, it's not looking at all promising for him. If his seat goes, that will be, in fact, the last Tory seat in Scotland.
Thanks very much, Jane. We hear that Tony Marlow, the blazered figure who supported John Redwood in the leadership campaign against John Major in '95, has lost his seat, Northampton North. And this was Ian Lang's result in Galloway and Upper Nithsdale. Let's just have a look at it. The SNP take this seat. Ian Lang, Trade and Industry Secretary, is defeated there. And he's with John Nicholson now. John.
Ian Lang, I mean, this is a disastrous night for the Conservatives, not just in the UK as a whole, but specifically in Scotland. Not a single Conservative seat in Scotland. I mean, what lessons do you read into that?
Well, I haven't heard all the results yet, and I don't think you have either. But certainly it has been a bad night for us. We were trying to win a fifth successive term. No government has ever succeeded in doing that. and I think people did decide it was time for a change.
But this is more than an ordinary protest vote against an unpopular government. I mean, if we're in a position in Scotland where there is not a single Conservative Member of Parliament, which now looks increasingly likely.
Well, we don't yet know that, do we?
Well, there are very few still to declare, as you know. The electorates clearly seem to be sending the Conservatives a message. I mean, what message in Scotland do you think they're being sent?
I think it's a United Kingdom message that they wanted a change of government. They were persuaded by the promises and pledges and high-flown rhetoric of the Labour Party. Now that party will have to deliver in government. It's always failed in the past, it'll probably fail again.
But of course your own defeat wasn't at the hands of the Labour Party, it was at the hands of the Scottish National Party. So there's something, apart from the national picture, there's something specific going on in Scotland too.
Yes, there's a rising tide, and in most of the country it has gone to Labour, but in other parts of the country it has gone to the party most likely to beat the government, and that is part of the pattern at the end of 4 parliaments.
I mean, you were seen as a possible leadership contender, of course, after this election. Obviously not in a position to contend for the leadership now. I mean, who would you like to see succeed John Major?
I'm not going to talk about that sort of issue tonight.
Would you have run had you still been in Parliament?
I'm not going to talk about that either. That's a hypothesis on top of another
let's go to
hypothesis.
Mitcham and Morden, where we have the result of Dame Angela Rumbold's contest.
27,000. Linda Miller, BNP, 521.
Siobhan
Angela
McDonough for
Rumbold,
Labour has
Conservative
taken the
Party,
seat, and Dame Angela Rumbold has been defeated. Vice Chairman of the party.
Krishna Vasan, 144. Thomas Walsh, Green Party, 415. And I do hereby declare that Siobhan McDonough is duly elected Member of Parliament for the Mitcham and Morden.
So Dame Angela Rumbold is defeated. Now we get the declaration from Tatton.
Ladies
Martin
and
Bell
gentlemen,
on the left there in
we
white.
have the result now for the Tatton constituency.
Neil Hamilton defending for the Conservatives.
I, Brian Longdon, being the acting returning officer
And this, of course, the great contest between the man in the white suit and the man with the cloud hanging over his head of accusations of improper conduct in the House of Commons.
The number of votes recorded for each candidate
Sir Gordon Downey,
at the
rather,
election
still to report
is
on
as
this.
follows. Martin Bell,
Independent,
29,300.
Well, it's fairly clear that Martin Bell has won that seat. Independent. Remember, Labour and Liberal Democrats stood down to let Mr. Bell contest this seat against Neil Hamilton.
354 votes. David Lawrence Bishop, 116 votes. Mostyn Neil Hamilton, 18,000.
A massive defeat for Neil Hamilton. 29,000 for Martin Bell, 18,000 for Neil Hamilton.
18,277 votes. Sam Hill, 295. Michael Paul Kennedy,
Natural Law,
123. Simon Lowther Kinsey,
Independent.
187.
This was the 5th safest Conservative seat, Tatton. Neil Hamilton was under pressure, some thought to stand down. The Prime Minister, right through this campaign, defended his decision not to try and have Neil Hamilton removed. There is the transvestite candidate, Miss Moneypenny, standing for Miss Moneypenny's glorious party. Nothing like a little local difficulty to attract a wide range of candidates. But anyway, Martin Bell went there. The Prime Minister right through said Sleaze wasn't an issue, this man was innocent until found guilty. The Tories were expected to rally round. The Tories quite clearly didn't rally round him. And Martin Bell finds himself in the unexpected position as a man with no particular political stance, no particular political views, except that he felt very strongly that standards in public life needed to be restored. And he's taken this seat. He was briefly a Liberal when he was at university. He's got a majority of 11,000. Here he is in the unexpected role of Member of Parliament.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Longden, I believe this is a proud moment for the people of Tatton, though I have to say a rather humbling one for me. I did not do this, you did it. It was not my victory, it was your victory. Though maybe there was a time when I received the endorsement of Sir Alec Guinness that I knew the force was with us. I believe you have lit a beacon which will shed light in some dark corners and illuminate the Mother of Parliaments itself. It is a strong signal to the rest of the country which will be heeded. My thanks go to the returning officer and his staff, to the police, of course to my own staff, Kate Jones, my publisher and agent, Melissa, my daughter and spin doctor, Nigel Bateson, my former cameraman and close friend, to Kate Edgley, Dave Gein and many others. What you have accomplished here has been to me some kind of a political miracle. I shall be and shall remain independent. I shall take no party whip. I shall serve for one term only. I am deeply grateful to all of you, and may I just repeat for the last time a couple of lines from G.K. Chesterton that I used during the campaign. Smile at us, pay us, pass us, but do not quite forget that we are the people of England, and we have not spoken yet. You have spoken tonight magnificently, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
There was Martin Bell. And now Neil Hamilton, the defeated Conservative candidate.
Mr. Longden, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. Longden, for the exemplary way in which you customarily have carried out your functions this evening, and to the police and all those who have been responsible for maintaining the security of this building to enable this democratic process to be carried out to the full, and to all those who have been responsible for counting the votes and delivering them here this evening. I have been proud to represent the Tatton constituency for the last 14 years, and of course am devastated at the result here this evening. I know it will come as a great disappointment to all those who have worked so hard to attempt to elect me for the fourth time as the Member of Parliament for this constituency.
Edinburgh Pentlands now, where Malcolm Rifkind is in difficulty. Foreign Secretary.
Linda Margaret Clark, Scottish Labour Party, 19,675. Jennifer Ann Dog, Scottish Liberal Democrat, 4,575. Stuart Gibb, Scottish National
We hear news
Party,
that Michael Portillo has lost his seat in Enfield by 1,700
Robin
votes.
Charles Morton Harper, Scottish Green Party.
So it looks as though it's Rifkind down and Portillo down.
Alistair David McConaughey, UK Independence Party, 81. Malcolm MacDonald, Referendum Party, 422. Malcolm Leslie Rifkind, Scottish Conservative and Unionist, 14,813. And I declare that Linda Margaret Clark has been elected to serve in Parliament as a member for the Edinburgh Pentlands constituency.
Well, she's a lawyer too, so she makes way at the Scottish Bar for Malcolm Rifkind, who's a Scottish lawyer. The Foreign Secretary defeated in Edinburgh Pentlands by Linda Clark. His majority of 5,000 turned into a majority for Labour of 5,000, a swing of 10% in Edinburgh Pentlands.
Tonight is a historic occasion. Democracy in action is awesome. Today at the polling station, I met by chance an old lady who was almost blind and she was crippled, but she was determined to vote. And I'm so pleased that so many people all over Britain have voted today. I thank the voters in Pentlands in particular for voting and for so many of them voting for me. I thank the returning officer.
This is Enfield North, the returning officer in the constituency held by Michael Portillo, John Redwood at Wokingham. It may be that he is the only person on the right of the party left to challenge for the leadership, if there is, and when there is a leadership battle. Enfield North, again, Michael Portillo's constituency. We're waiting for the declaration there. And it looks as though it'll be a few minutes before we get that. So we have an extraordinary position of cabinet ministers falling fast. Here is Michael Portillo. There he is, down at Enfield North. Let's just have a look at him. Looking quite perturbed. Tony King, we're losing minister after minister after minister. What's the current tally?
Absolutely. It looks as though there's going to be one of the biggest culls of ministers in this century. The Conservatives in 1945 lost 5 members of the cabinet, including, it must be said, Harold Macmillan, who went on to do good things. It looks as though, of all the ministers who are defending Tory seats tonight, 2/3 of them are likely to lose their seats. A lot have already gone. We've had Ian Lang, Michael Forsyth, Tom Sackville, Alistair Burt, John Boas, Sir Nicholas Bonsor. They're going down like 9 pins.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, that's the way it crumbles. Jeremy.
Cecil Parkinson, who do you fancy for the leadership, assuming you don't have to go to the House of Lords?
Well, I think that we really have to wait and see about that. We have to see who's going to be there. And I just think it's far too early to discuss it. I really do. I simply don't know who the candidates are likely to be.
Now, Ian Duncan Smith, what in your view went wrong?
I think it's very difficult. We'll have to look now carefully and try and assess it. But my instinct tells me that it all really started to go wrong for us in the first year when we crashed out of the ERM. Because I think the British public then decided that we were no longer in charge of the economy at that stage. And if you look at the opinion polls, we went off the edge of a cliff at that point, and we've never really recovered through Maastricht, through all the difficulties. The fact that we had perhaps another year and a half of...
Edwina Carey can join us, I believe. Can you join us, Mrs. Carey?
Yes, indeed.
In fact, I see behind you, I think that the Prime Minister's arriving in Huntingdon, so we'll just come back to you in just a second or two, if we may. Why do you think John Major lost, Mrs. Carey?
Well, we all lost, and this is part of the tragedy. We've lost most of the cabinet, it sounds like, and all the seats in Scotland. I think in the end we lost because we did not satisfy the British people about our probity, about our wisdom, and about our common sense.
Do you blame the Eurosceptics in particular?
It's more than that. It's not just Eurosceptics. I think the British nation, whatever its dislike about Europe, has always broadly been pro-European. But whatever their moans about education, whatever moans about the police and law and order, they've always been, as well, broadly pro-public service, especially in those services they can't provide for themselves.
Do you share Ian Duncan Smith's view, we were just hearing him express there, that it all started to go wrong when he tumbled out of the ERM?
Well, I like Ian very much indeed, but I am reminded that he's one of the people that's been voting against the Prime Minister and voting against us on a number of issues right through this Parliament. And that kind of disunity and disagreement with the party line has not, in the end, been very helpful. I think it started before that, to be honest. We came in last time on the belief and the promise that we could keep taxes down, and that proved impossible. Perhaps we should have realised it, but in the end we put taxes up, the biggest peacetime hike in taxes we've ever seen, and the electorate didn't like
Ian
it.
Duncan Smith, what do you say?
Well, with respect to Edwina, I have to say that this really comes back to that fact that we were in a recession longer than we anticipated, hence taxes went up because of the ERM and because it pegged us into a very depressed state. When we tumbled out, the British public said, enough, and I think that's our problem. We have to look at this carefully. It's not the only reason, but it's a very strong feature. All the polls show us that.
Let's hear from George Gardner, who was one of the more troublesome Conservative Eurosceptical backbench MPs who's in Reigate waiting for his result. What do you think it was, Sir George? You've been predicting this for ages.
Oh yes, I mean the irony is that if John Major had listened to the advice that I and others like Ian Duncan Smith were giving him, a year or so ago, then we wouldn't have had the rout that we've clearly got this evening.
Sir George, do you think it was helpful to Mr Major's chances of winning that you described him as having his buttocks clenched on the fence?
I don't think it affected the matter at all. By then, I think the Tories had lost anyway.
But Sir George, you were one of numerous people in your party who was setting out deliberately to undermine the Prime Minister.
No, we weren't setting out to undermine the Prime Minister. We were setting out to get him to adopt some sensible policies that had some credibility with the electorate.
Would it have made a difference?
Alas, and he's paying the price for that now.
Would it have made
all the Conservative Party are.
Sure, although you're not part of it at present. But
I'm not part of it, no.
Indeed.
No.
Would it have made a difference if Kenneth Clarke had not had the influence he'd had?
Oh, I'm sure it would, though it's a question of degree, isn't it? I'm sure still the Tories would have lost. I tend to agree with Duncan Smith that really this slide began with the departure from the ERM, or indeed sticking in the ERM for far too long.
Cecil Parkinson, you've already told us that you think it was simply a question that you've been around so long.
I think that was a major factor, not the only thing, but I think really and truly it is a tremendous undertaking to try to win 5 consecutive elections. And I think one always recognised that. And the Labour Party has reorganised itself, has regrouped, improving with each election since '79. And sooner or later, we were not going to win. And there have been all sorts of other factors, as Ian's been pointing out. But I do think it would have been very difficult in any circumstances to win a 5th term.
What do you think about Michael Portillo losing his seat? He was your PPS, wasn't he?
Well, he was my special advisor, and then he was my number 2 in transport. I'm devastated. I think he's a quite outstanding politician.
We should say the declaration hasn't actually happened yet, but the word
but I
is
mean,
that
he's been an excellent defence minister. He's very highly regarded in the department. He's had a very good election campaign, come over well, and I'm just extremely sorry. I think he's a most able person.
Well, who knows? He might still hold it. Ian Duncan Smith, who will you now? You backed John Redwood, didn't you, when he challenged for the leadership?
At the leadership challenge, yeah.
He probably is about the only Eurosceptic left in a position to do so next time, I guess.
I think we have to take stock. I don't think there's a chance to rush around. I think the Prime Minister has to think, maybe the ex-Prime Minister John Major ought to think carefully about what he plans to do. We don't want recriminations. What we actually want is carefully to analyse what's happened and try and rebuild this party back into government. That's the key.
Thank you all very much, David.
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, John Redwood is having an emotional night, rushing around on the telephone and listening to all these results, and no doubt waiting to see what happens to his potential rival for the leadership, Michael Portillo. He was there at his count in Wokingham, where he's been constantly on the telephone and being congratulated, looking rather moved by his wife, Gail. So, we've had other results in which we should look at. Perhaps the most striking, Mrs. Thatcher's old seat, Finchley, taken by Labour. John Marshall defeated on a swing of 15%. Hartley Booth, who was there, was deselected. He was one of the first victims of the Back to Basics campaign, which the Prime Minister, perhaps with hindsight, rather ill-advisedly ran, and found a number of his MPs falling out of the wrong beds swiftly afterwards. Ilford South, a Labour win. Sir Neil Thorne is defeated there, a 17% swing. He held it before. Mike Gapes takes it for Labour. Labour gain Hendon, a swing of 16%. Sir John Gorst, who fought a feisty campaign there, including denouncing the Tory party over the proposal to close Edgware Hospital, after he'd been told, as he thought, that it wouldn't be. 16% swing. So the scoreboard now stands at Labour 299 up 77, the Conservatives on 39, that's up down 97, and the Liberal Democrats on 24 up 16. And we're about to get this result, which we've been waiting for, from Enfield Southgate, Michael Portillo's seat. There's the count. And Lance Price is there, and we're waiting for Mr. Portillo, who, after all, If he had won this seat, would have certainly been one of the prime contenders. We heard him earlier this evening speaking loyally about the need for the party to stick together. And it now looks as though he may not have got it. Lance, are you there?
Yes, I am, and at the moment, just out of shot there, the returning officer is giving the results to the candidates, to Michael Portillo, to Stephen Twigg, his Labour opponent, who we believe, has won the seat. We can see Mr. Portillo there now. Once the returning officer has gone through the formalities of giving the result to them, they all knew the result a few minutes earlier in any case, but this is the formal handing over of that result. They're now going up onto the podium for the declaration here in Enfield Southgate.
Well, this, Lance, is a devastating blow for Mr. Portillo if it is true that he's lost this seat, because this was his one chance to take over the leadership of the Conservative Party, and he's blown it by losing his own seat. It must be a really tough moment for him.
The look on his face as he's been going around in the past few minutes before this count has been extraordinary. He obviously knows that his chances of taking over now are very slim.
For the Enfield Southgate constituency, held on the first day of May 1997, hereby give notice that the total number of votes recorded for each candidate at the election is as follows. Brown, Jeremy Richard, Liberal Democrat, 4,966. Luard, Nicholas Lammett, Referendum Party, 1,342. Malakuna, Andrew, Mal, Voice of the People, 229. Portillo, Michael Denzil Xavier. Thank you, members. Conservative Party, 19,137. Storkey, Alan James, Christian Democrat, 289. Twigg, Stephen, Labour Party, 20,507.
Well, look at the face of Gillian Shepherd listening to these results coming through, watching the screen, and John Redwood in Wokingham. Michael Portillo has lost the seat. Labour celebrates at the Festival Hall as the Thatcher favourite, one of the bastards in the cabinet, as John Major called him. He was accused of plotting last time for the leadership, is defeated by young Stephen Twigg.
Duly elected Member of Parliament for the constituency.
And Michael Portillo has a swing of 17.5% against him. He took this seat in a by-election just after 83, took a seat in a by-election, which is not that easy to do when the Conservatives were in power, and has lost it at the general election on a swing of nearly 17.5%. So that ends one challenger for the leadership of the Conservative Party. The Defence Secretary is out.
And to say that this result, along with result after result across the country, demonstrates that there is no longer such a thing as a no-go area for the Labour Party. Can I thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the police and all of the others responsible for ensuring the smooth and efficient running of the count and the smooth and efficient running of the election process here in Enfield Southgate. Can I thank all of the other candidates? We've had a good campaign here, we've had no dirty tricks here, we've had an honest, open debate in the Enfield Southgate constituency, and that's welcome. And can I finally, but most importantly, thank two groups of people. First of all, my agent, Tony Watts, and the rest of the campaign team in Enfield Southgate, and those Labour supporters and members who came from outside Southgate to help, particularly over the last few weeks. And secondly, and most importantly of all, the 20,000 people who voted Labour in Southgate, those who voted Labour consistently through the difficult years as well as now through the good years for Labour. Their loyalty and consistency has been repaid with this result. Thousands of first-time voters, thousands of people switching from other parties, especially the Conservatives, and certainly hundreds of Liberal Democrats who put aside their national preference, voted tactically for Labour to ensure a non-Conservative victory. I pay tribute to all of them, and I will serve as the Member of Parliament for all of them, and indeed for all of the people who didn't vote for me as well. It's a good night for Labour, it's a good night for the country. You've all been here a long time, so you probably don't want to hear much more from me. We've got a long night to celebrate and the weekend as well, but thanks a lot.
Michael Portillo, very punctilious, applauding his opponent who's just defeated him here.
My first duty is to
in Enfield
congratulate
Southgate.
Stephen Twigg on his victory and say that no one knows better than I what a great privilege it is to be the Member of Parliament for Enfield Southgate. He'll enjoy it very much indeed. I think he'll be a very good Member of Parliament, and I wish him well with it. We're obviously also going to have a new government. Government has to represent this country and do its best, and I wish the new government well too. It has been a great privilege to serve, and I thank all those people who made it possible for me for 13 years. In this election campaign, I'd like to thank Malcolm Tindall, I'd like to thank all my supporters and the Conservative Association that has supported me for all these years. A truly terrible night for the Conservatives. I would have wished to have been part of rebuilding it inside the House of Commons. I can't now do that, but I would like to do whatever I can from the wings to help rebuild a great party which has a great future. One thing alone I will not miss, and that's all the questions about the leadership. Thank you very much.
Michael Portillo there, saying it's a terrible night for the Conservatives. At any rate, he doesn't have to answer questions about the leadership because he has been defeated and is out of the House of Commons. We're joined now by Gillian Shepherd, I hope, from Norfolk South West, the Education Secretary. Mrs. Shepherd, are you in trouble in your constituency?
Well, they've only just started to count the votes, but given tonight's swings, anything could happen.
So you might well be defeated as well.
Who could say?
What do you make of the results so far?
Well, clearly, as Michael Portillo said, it's an enormously disappointing night for the government, for the Conservative Party. It's a particular blow that Michael has so narrowly lost his seat. He will be enormously missed, and I so admired the typically graceful and elegant and indeed generous way in which he just spoke. Of course, he will be back.
Do you have any idea why you've suffered this devastating defeat?
Well, various theories have been put forward on your programmes during the course of the evening. There is no doubt that when we think that the last Labour government was elected 23 years ago, the electorate may well have thought it was time for a change. It is also certainly the case that the appearance that the parliamentary party has at times given over the past few years of being divided and of squabbling amongst themselves has not endeared us to the electorate. We've all had a lot of feedback, or I certainly have, from constituencies up and down the country and from my own, of people who feel very critical of the parliamentary party, which has at times appeared to be concerned with its own internal politics rather than the Conservative Party in the country at large.
So did you know even before yesterday that the game was up?
No, I think most people would have said, and it was certainly what I found, that the reception on the doorsteps was uniformly positive and pleasant. However, clearly what we were all doing was merely sampling opinion, and it is indeed a big night for the Labour Party and a big night for the government of this country.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Shepherd.
Thank you.
And we'll hear your result. When do you expect your result to come through?
Oh, many hours to come.
Many hours?
Oh, many hours.
What, tomorrow
yes.
morning?
I shouldn't worry about it if I were you.
No, we'll be watching very, very closely. Thank you very much. Jeremy.
Okay, bye.
David. Margaret Hodge, Stephen Twigg, who unseated Michael Portillo, you're not going to pretend you expected him to do that.
No, I don't think we did expect him to do so. I know him very well. He was my researcher until he very recently took up the secretaryship of the Fabian Society. And in fact, it was a condition of his taking the job at the Fabian Society that he wouldn't then stand for Parliament. We knew he had this seat that he was going for, but at that point it seemed most unlikely that he'd win it. It just shows the extent of the Conservative defeat.
Okay, sloganising apart and point scoring apart, what is your explanation for what's happening tonight?
I think it's a number of things. I mean, I do think it is a final comment or a judgment on the Conservative government. I have to say it's the sleaze, it's the arrogance, it's the years of power. It is actually seeming to work in their own interest rather than everybody's interest. So there's all that sort of anti-Conservative feeling which has finally borne fruit. And it's borne fruit because Labour has renewed itself. We are a new Labour Party. I think Tony Blair has done the most fantastic job in a very, very short period of time to really renew and regenerate the Labour Party so that it is in tune with the values of people today.
Ian Duncan Smith, you're a neighbour of Michael Portillo. Does any of that ring any kind of chord with you at all? Because the discussion among Conservatives we've been having here so far has been all about you losing it rather than Labour winning it.
Yeah, I think that in Michael's case there were some demographic changes, so there were some other problems, but nobody expected Michael to lose his seat. I must also say that nothing befits him so well as the manner of his passing. I thought the speech he made was gracious and showed great character, and I know he'll be back. It's just a matter of when. There is no explanation at the moment other than that the public has decided that they wanted a change, and we'll have to decide what those reasons are, but there was a definite, they want a change. I don't think it was an overwhelming vote. I still don't think for Labour. I think it was really a vote at the moment devastatingly against us.
Margaret Hodge, a forecast majority of 187. You're looking at probably... I'm so sorry, I've got to stop there. We got David.
Jeremy, thank you very much. We go to Stevenage.
Pro-Life Alliance, 196.
You got a result from Stevenage.
196. Coalcraft, Andrew Brinley Michael, Natural Law Party, 110. 110. Coburn, Geoffrey Michael, the Referendum Party candidate, 1,194. 1194. Follett, Daphne Barbara, the Labour Party candidate, 28,440.
A huge outburst of support for Barbara Follett as she takes Stevenage from the Conservatives. High on Labour's target list, 37.
28440. Wilcock, Alexander Ian Cameron, Liberal Democrat, 4,588. 4588. Wood, Timothy John Rogerson, the Conservative Party candidate, 16,858. 16858. And that the said Daphne Barbara Follett has been duly elected to serve as member for the Stevenage constituency.
So Barbara Follett takes that, and we go down to Bristol West. William Waldegrave.
Referendum Party.
And at this point we can say Labour has an overall majority, the 330 it needs. It's going to go way beyond that, of course, but it's got the 330 that it needs.
Boney,
and there's William Waldegrave, the
Liberal
Chief Secretary of the Treasury, looking rather gloomy on the right there.
551.
Jonathan Aitken has lost Thanet South. Thanet, incidentally, the seat that Cherie Blair stood for in 1983, when Jonathan Aitken held it for the Conservatives.
47. Valerie Davey, Labour Party, 22,000.
So William Waldegrave defeated in Bristol West. His majority of 9,000 overturned. Majority of 9,000 overturned, and Valerie Davey moves up from third place to take that seat. So we now have Labour heading for a vast majority. They've just passed the 330 mark, which gives them the certainty of being in government, but it's going to be much bigger than that, isn't it, Peter?
Here's how Tony Blair has changed the history of the country for the last 2 decades. 1979, Mrs. Thatcher beat Jim Callaghan. Miss David?
Now there's the Piccadilly Circus flashing on the screen there, the Labour victory. And it'd be nice to see if there are any crowds there watching that, but perhaps there aren't. But John Major in Huntingdon, hearing that result and knowing that all is up, he's at his count in Huntingdon. Peter, I'm sorry we interrupted you at the end of an era.
I don't think we can do better than Piccadilly Circus, but here we go anyway. Here's Mrs. Thatcher in 1979 beating Jim Callaghan, beginning the 18 years of Conservative rule. She did it again, if you remember, with that huge majority of 144 in 83. That was the high watermark of Conservative success. Then the third one, a little bit less, but still a convincing majority in 1987. Then John Major, to many people's surprise, won the election of 1992, the last one, with a majority of 21. And now, that's all changed. The era of Conservative rule is over. There is Mr. Blair with the most convincing majority, 187, a record Labour majority, bigger than any other majority since the war. He's got a larger lead over the Conservatives than any Labour party's had before, and the Tories are way down there with the worst share of the vote since 1832. It's a staggering Labour victory and the end of an era of British history.
Thank you very much, Peter. Well, there's the result, flashing over Piccadilly Circus. And as it does, we go down to find out what is going to happen in Wokingham to John Redwood.
Gentlemen,
he's won the seat.
The glad news of Conservative victory in Wokingham is, of course, tinged with sadness about the national result for all Conservatives. I am delighted that half of the electors of this constituency have put their trust again in me in the ballot box today. I will work hard on their behalf and on behalf of all my constituents, whatever they voted in this election. And I promise to all those constituents that I will faithfully perform my duties to the best of my abilities in the interests of the whole constituency. I would tonight like to thank all the returning officers' staff for the excellent work they've done, making sure that the local authority ballots don't get mixed up with the parliamentary, and coming to such an excellent answer when they came to their counted conclusion. I would like to thank all the security staff and all the staff involved in this leisure centre for making it available tonight for this important night of our local democracy. I would like to pay a tribute to all the candidates in this election. I think we had a decent battle over the major issues. I certainly enjoyed putting the case across. I certainly enjoyed listening to what people had to say. And yes, we do need better schools. Yes, we do need to modernise our local hospital. And yes, we do need to make sure that Britain gets a good deal in Europe. Those were the messages from the doorsteps. Those are the messages I have clearly understood. Those are the messages that will carry me through this next parliamentary term. So thank you all. Thank you for an excellent result and an excellent contest. And I look forward to the next 5 years, making sure that Wokingham has a strong and good voice in the House of Commons.
John Redwood speaking at his count, and it does now look as though there are going to be no Tory MPs outside England. It's one Welsh seat they might hold, but we think they've lost it, which is Brecon and Radnor. That means there will be no Conservatives at all in Wales or in Scotland. Jeremy.
David, well, I'm joined now from his count by Michael Portillo, who's just lost his seat there. When you were here at the start of this programme, Mr. Portillo, you didn't look like a man who knew he was going to lose, did you?
I didn't know it, but I thought it was possible.
Why?
Because there was obviously a very big swing underway.
And now what do you attribute that to?
I really don't know. I think, as I said to you earlier, that needs quite a bit of thinking out. What I would say, I said it earlier, was that the party was pretty divided. And what I say now, for the first time I can speak without anyone suspecting me of having leadership ambitions or speaking to further my own ambitions. I can now say that I plead with the party not to fall into disunity and opposition, because that would be the way of staying there.
Do you regret that you didn't stand for the leadership yourself?
No, I don't actually. I thought John Major was the right man to carry the leadership of the party. And now it's come to what we see today, and I will do what I can to work from the outside to rebuild what is a great party.
How can the party unite around the present policy on the single currency?
Well, I'm now a man outside the House of Commons, so I don't have to bother with questions like that.
I thought you just told the people at your declaration that you were going to work in any capacity you could to further the party.
Jeremy, I'm taking an evening off. Listen, I will do what I can to bring unity to the party, but I'm going to do it by talking to the party, not by talking to you.
Sure, but it follows from that, doesn't it, that you believe you cannot have unity around the present policy?
It follows from that the party needs to reflect very carefully about how it's going to move forward. And I very much hope that it will be united. And as I say, since I clearly have no axe to grind in this matter, I hope that my words may carry some weight in that respect.
Is the present policy the right policy?
Oh, Jeremy, do stop this nonsense.
Well, I think we'll have to stop the interview unless you've got anything else you particularly want to tell us this evening.
It was you who wanted the interview.
You do. This is your last opportunity, Mr. Portillo.
Oh, not necessarily.
You seem very good humour for a chap who's lost his seat and his chance of leading the party.
Well, I think it's inherent in politics that you have to be prepared for ups and downs.
OK. Mr. Portillo, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks very much.
We go straight to Exeter for the declaration. Looks as though Ben Bradshaw has taken it for Labour. A very bitterly fought campaign between the Tory Dr. Adrian Rogers, right-winger, and Ben Bradshaw, who openly homosexual, and a lot of propaganda against him from Dr. Adrian Rogers during the campaign itself.
Paul Anthony Edwards,
Green Party,
643. Corinne Patricia Haynes,
Independents,
638. James Kenneth Meakin,
Pensioners,
282. David John Morrish,
Liberal,
2,062. Adrian Rudd Rogers,
Conservative,
17,693. And that Benjamin Peter James Bradshaw has been duly elected to serve as Member of Parliament for this constituency.
So this is the seat that was held by the Tories by Sir John Hannam, and he's been defeated. He shakes hands even with the Conservative who made such bitter attacks on him. They both shake hands, slightly unexpected moment that. The swing of 12% from Conservative to Labour, and Ben Bradshaw, former BBC reporter, becomes an MP.
Historic night for Britain. It's a doubly historic night for Exeter. Because the people here have not just rejected the Conservatives and chosen Labour, they've rejected fear and chosen hope, and they have rejected bigotry and chosen reason. And for that, I want to thank them from the depths of my heart. I'd also like to thank the returning officer, all his polling station staff, the counters here in the hall, and the police. I'd like to thank the candidates from the Green Party, the Old Liberal Party, the UK Independence Party, and the Pensioners Party for their clean and honourable campaign. I'd like to thank my wonderful family and friends and my
Huntingdon,
partner,
where the
Neil.
Prime Minister's declaration is about to come through. The very safe Conservative seat. It used to be the safest, but Alan Clark in Kensington and Chelsea now has the safest Conservative seat. Prime Minister's seat has slipped a bit down the list, but still a majority of 22,000 at the last election. So he should be have no problems with holding that. Here he comes into the hall with Norma Major, the Prime Minister, who's remained extraordinarily good-humoured throughout this campaign, despite the vicissitudes of the fight. He travelled around early morning till late at night, and even when challenged at press conferences and in interviews and all the rest of it, has always remained smiling with a almost, some people said it was as though he was freed by the campaign, but he certainly looked as if he was enjoying the campaign. And what he will do now is very uncertain. We shall have to wait to see whether we get from him tonight an acceptance of defeat or whether he waits until tomorrow, and then we have to discover whether he stands down, as must seem probable, from the leadership of his party.
And that will be read to you by the High Sheriff of Cambridgeshire, Mr. David Rampley. Mr. Rampley.
I, David Temple Rampley, being the returning officer for the Huntingdon constituency, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows: David James Bellamy, 3,114. Charles Raymond Coyne, 331. Veronica Hufford, 177. John Major, 31,501. Matthew James Owen, 8,390. Jason Rees, 13,361. Duncan John Robertson, 89. And that John Major has been duly elected to serve as a member for the Huntingdon constituency.
Mr. High Sheriff, I'd first like, if I may, to congratulate all those who've carried out the count of this very large constituency with such skill and with such speed. I'd also add my thanks to all those who cared for the security of the polling booths throughout the day and manned them. It is a job that has been done, as we have come to expect in Huntingdon, with immense efficiency, and I'm very grateful to everyone who played their part in carrying that out today. I'd like also, if I may, to thank my fellow candidates in this constituency. I have been something of an absentee candidate, at least in the Huntingdon constituency, but I understand that the battle here has been fought with great courtesy and great skill. And I congratulate all those who played a part in the campaign. I'm sure they will look forward to their future campaigns. I'd like also, if I may, to thank a number of people to whom I owe almost more than it's possible to express readily and easily. Perhaps I may start with my agent, Peter Brown, a peer amongst agents. Not only my agent, but a very old and dear friend, and I'm very grateful to him for all he has done, not just during this campaign, but during recent years when he's perhaps had to undertake many burdens that perhaps would not normally have fallen upon the shoulders of anyone's agent. I'd like to thank also my constituency officers and the literally thousands of people who've worked in this constituency on my behalf during this campaign and over recent years. Their work has been immense. The affection I have for this constituency is not easily expressed, but I think it is known by those people who live in the constituency, and I'm deeply privileged to have the opportunity of representing it yet again. Huntingdonshire has only had 2 members of Parliament since 1945. I have just been elected for the 5th time in this constituency, and I look forward with the same pleasure at serving my constituents in the future as I have found in doing so in the past. Above all, though, I'd like to express my thanks to Norma and to my family. Perhaps these thanks are most appropriately expressed in private, but I think most people who have known Norma, most people who have seen her, will realise that not only has she graced this constituency for 18 years, I think she has graced a much larger stage in recent years, and my debt to her and my debt to her is one not easily paid. It is perfectly clear now that the Labour Party has had an extremely successful evening. I telephoned Mr. Blair a little over an hour ago to congratulate him on his success and to wish him every good fortune in the great responsibilities that he will have in the years that lie ahead. This is a great country. He inherits a country in extremely good economic shape. I wish him every success in sustaining that in the interests of all the people of this country. I think I can promise that the Conservative Party will be a vigorous opposition. Where it is appropriate to support, we will support. Where it is in the interests of the country to support, we will support. Where we believe the policies are wrong, we will oppose vigorously, but honestly and fairly. But all that, I think, lies ahead for another day. For today, let me perhaps just add one further thought. Elections always have winners, and they always have losers. It is a very great occasion to win an election, a very great occasion to be elected to Parliament. Many colleagues and old friends of mine will have contested seats tonight and lost them. Many colleagues will have contested seats on behalf of my party this evening, contested them well and bravely, but lost them. I would like, if I may, to express to all of them my thanks for all they've done on behalf of our country and our party, and my thanks also to the literally hundreds of thousands of people who have helped in the Conservative Party campaign and the millions of our fellow citizens who voted for the Conservative Party on this occasion. We are a great and historic party, the Conservative Party. We have had great victories in our time. We have had defeats in our time. We accept them both, I hope, with a certain dignity and a certain grace. Tonight, we have been comprehensively defeated. We will listen to the voice of the electorate. We will consider what has been said to us. I think we must reflect upon it. I know that we will, and I know when we have reflected, we will begin to prepare once again for that day in the future, I hope not too far distant, when my party may once again return to government in the service of this country. Thank you.
John Major saying that he rang Tony Blair an hour ago and congratulated him on his victory and wished him well.
I must be the happiest.
And paying a tribute to Norma Major, who actually during this campaign has been very popular, going around with him. People have been asking to speak to her rather than him, according to reports, during the campaigning. There's been a great support to him. Now we're joined for the second time tonight by Michael Heseltine, who's in Henley. Mr. Heseltine, when we talked before, we were talking and flirting with the idea, as so often in interviews with you, about the leadership of the Conservative Party. There's nothing much left to lead tonight, is there?
Well, I think that there is always something to lead if you are a member of the Conservative Party, because it is a party, as you well know and everyone knows, with a huge tradition, made a massive contribution to this country, and with an instinct for government. Have not the slightest doubt that the battle will begin to fight back, and that will be the instinct of the Conservative Party, particularly as the arguments we put forward, the achievements to our credit, will stand the test of time. It's not tonight to refight the election campaign, but just because you lose the votes, it doesn't mean to say you've changed your mind about the arguments that you deployed. And I think you've heard John Major spell that out very clearly on behalf of the party in the interview that he's just given.
Is there any one of your cabinet colleagues that you're particularly sad to have lost tonight?
Well, it's a shattering situation to see people like Michael Portillo and Malcolm Rifkin and Ian Lang and Michael Forsyth, just to name the names immediately that come to mind, who have served this country, the government of which they're a member, the Conservative Party, in such a remarkably skilled and dedicated way, lose their seats. One is quite devastated by what has happened there. But I think there's just one other thought. They'll be back.
But what do you say to those Tories who remain, the 160-odd that are going to be in the House of Commons, and to your supporters around the country, about what happens now? Is it going to be led by somebody like yourself, who can bring the party back together again, or thinks they can?
Well, I think that it will be led by John Major. And,
you really?
Yes, I do. I think.
You don't think he's going to stand down?
I don't see any indication of that. And I believe that in the interview he gave, he was giving you certainly the impression I got that conversations would take place, discussions and analysis, in which he was intending to play a full part, and I'm sure that everybody would welcome that.
What is your reaction to the defeat of Neil Hamilton in Tatton?
Well, I think that that's best left for the history books.
Why do you say that?
Because I don't see why you think I should comment on something like that, which is for Neil a personal tragedy. It's happened. You can have a judgment, I can have a judgment, but I'm not going to be drawn on that. I feel sorry for the man and for his wife in these circumstances.
Do you think it was one of the factors that made it difficult for the Tories tonight, or an irrelevancy?
Well, I think that there is an argument which I would subscribe to, that there were incidents in a number of cases in the last Parliament, which it's very difficult to think of a Prime Minister who has had so many examples of bad luck quite outside his own control as those that affected John Major.
Mr. Heseltine, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeremy.
I'm joined now by Sir Edward Heath from his county Old Bexley and Sidcup. Sir Edward, what do you judge went wrong?
In the whole of the election campaign?
Yes.
I think it goes much further back than that. And it showed that in some cases we were out of touch with people. And we were also pursuing policies which they didn't accept.
Specifically which?
Well, I think myself that to put forward a complicated pension scheme a fortnight before the campaign began was unwise. It's difficult for people to understand, and they immediately became worried about it, as elderly people do tend to be. And so that was an action which didn't need to be taken at that particular time and could have been held back.
How much do you think there was a question of lack of confidence in the leadership ability of the Prime Minister? I mean, you said he should have sacked those ministers who questioned the government line.
I would have preferred him to have done that. The same applies to the questions which arose over, quotes, sleaze, quotes. Hamilton should never have stood at this election.
Do you think now that Mr. Major can continue as leader of a party that's divided from top to toe as yours is?
No, our job now is to review very thoroughly the present situation and how it's developed. We had to do this in 1945, directly after the defeat of the party after the war. We had to do it in 1964. We'd had 13 years in power. And Alec Douglas Hume told me to organize a complete review, which we did. And we said this isn't just to justify what we've done in the past. What we've got to do is look quite impartially at it and say, well, was what we did justified? and what is successful or not. And if it wasn't, then scrap it and think out new policies to deal with the present situation.
So you're saying right back to the drawing board?
Yes, absolutely. That doesn't mean to say that you will scrap everything which we've had in the past, but you will analyze it very carefully and decide whether it's right to continue with it.
Sir Edward, thank you very much. David.
Well, Peter, perhaps we should have a look now at how Labour is doing. They've almost scored every hit they needed, haven't they? And more.
Well, I think one or two exceptions, but the devastating thing about this Labour victory is the way they've hit so effectively in the areas that they needed to do it in. I mean, up in the Scottish and the North areas and the Wales and so on, the swing has been nothing like as big as it has been down in this devastatingly important area to them in the south, where all those Tory marginals are. 14%. I mean, it's a record-breaking swing by any standard since the war. 14% swing in the south and in London, 11% there in places like the Midlands. And the result of that is that when we look at our targets and we see how well Tony Blair's party's aim has been, it is absolutely devastating, particularly these clusters down here. Still a few results to come. Let me just lose the ones that haven't yet been declared. You can see there, these are the safer, these were the safer Tory seats, so seats like Portsmouth North here, and for example Dumfries in Scotland, and these ones like the Vale of Glamorgan were very unsafe, very small Tory majority before. Now as we fly around, watch the hits here clocking up in the little hit box. The first one we're going for is Plymouth Sutton, then Exeter, you can see just beyond it there. There goes Exeter. Here comes Portsmouth North, the most difficult of those targets to hit. You can just see Simon Hughes surviving in the middle of London, but surrounded by those great skyscrapers of red in London. So one Liberal Democrat survives, but otherwise just devastation everywhere, and huge Labour majorities building up where those powerful Tory majorities were before. Stirling in Scotland, Michael Forsyth's seat going up there, the last one. And you can see there that, yes, the Welsh nationalists have survived in Ceredigion, and also Simon Hughes, of course, in London. But otherwise, it's going to be 98 hits on that target and 2 misses only. David.
Thanks, Peter. Not all Tory ministers have taken the plunge tonight or walked the plank. Folkestone and Hythe, for instance, Michael Howard, with a split opposition from Liberal Democrats and Labour, held on there, 20,000 for him, 14,000 for the Liberal Democrats. John Aspinall, incidentally, the zookeeper, who's the referendum candidate there, doing rather well, getting 8% of the vote in Folkestone and Hythe, but the Home Secretary holds it, 6,000 majority. Not quite yet the former Home Secretary. Hitchin and Harpenden, Peter Lilly, Secretary of State for Social Security. He gets a very big swing against him, but it's a safe seat. 15% swing against Peter Lilly, but he holds on to the seat. Fergus Walsh is in Charnwood, Stephen Dorrell's seat. We haven't yet had his declaration, but Fergus, what's your impression of how he's reacting to the news? First of all, of the disappearance of one or two of the potential rivals, and second, what kind of party it is there left to lead?
Well, sources very close to Mr. Dorrell are saying there should be a leadership election in July, that Mr. Major should carry on for the moment, signal his intention to stand down, but hold on to give time to regroup, to give time for people to discuss what went wrong. There are Tory party rules which say that after a general election there should be, if there is a leadership election, not before 3 months and not after 6 months. And sources close to Mr. Dorrell say it would be within the spirit of that to hold a leadership election in July.
Well, now, why do you think he wants that? Does he see that as an advantage to him and not to his rivals?
Absolutely, because it would give him time to group his supporters together. Of course, Mr. Redwood's been out of the cabinet for some time now, so his bandwagon will roll pretty quickly. But Mr. Dorrell is saying also, or Mr. Dorrell's sources rather, are saying that what we need to do is analyse here what went wrong, why the message went so badly wrong on the doorstep. And Mr. Dorrell's sources are saying that there were really 3 major factors that went wrong here. First, the time for a change. Nothing really they could do about that. Secondly, continuing hurt from the recession. And thirdly, the mixed-up message on Europe.
Fergus, thanks very much indeed. We just have heard that the Prime Minister is going to Buckingham Palace at 11:30 in the morning. Our cameras will be there. We'll be following it, of course, to hand in his resignation. And Tony Blair will follow within the half hour or so. By midday, we shall have a new Prime Minister. Anne Perkins is at John Redwood's count and has been talking to him. Let's hear from John Redwood, who won his seat in Wokingham.
Well, I'm joined now by John Redwood, whose swing against whom was only 6%, a good deal less than the national average. But you said 2 years ago, no change, no chance, nationally. Do you think you've been proved right?
Well, I take no comfort in that. I was worried 2 years ago that we would not win the next general election, and I did think then changes were necessary. But I'm just very pleased that the voters of Wokingham have backed me again for another parliament. I'm very pleased that about half of them did support me. Obviously disappointed I've lost the support of some of them, and I will just work very hard over the next 5 years to try and win them over.
You've also lost an awful lot of your friends in Parliament. An awful lot of people have gone. Why? Why is this result so bad for the Conservatives?
Well, it is a very sad night indeed for the Conservative Party. And yes, I'm very upset for a lot of my friends in Parliament who served their constituents very well, who with their colleagues have worked very hard in this election campaign and will no longer be able to serve in the next Parliament. I don't think it's time yet for explanations. Tonight is about results. It's about finding out who has won and who has lost.
But you must have a gut instinct about what was wrong with the way the campaign was being fought.
Well, I want to look at the overall results in the light of morning and think what would be right to say. I don't think it's sensible to rush off tonight with all sorts of explanations when the party is obviously extremely upset by the results, and when we need to pull together and when we need to rebuild ourselves as a decent force in opposition.
But can you not put your finger... I mean, you here ran a campaign focused very tightly on education, on health, on Europe. Surely you could say whether or not you feel those were the issues that should have been hit nationally.
Well, they were right for my campaign here, because we do seem to have had less severe a swing against us. And we did feel that people were very interested in those three big issues, health, education and Europe, and that on health and education they needed reassuring that we were going to spend enough in the future, that we had been making changes for the better. And on Europe, they wanted reassuring that we were not going to take them into a federal superstate. With a Blair-led government, it will now be most important for Conservatives to make sure that Mr. Blair does not give away powers to govern this country that we will need in the future.
Do you think John Major can survive this result?
I'm not commenting on anything like that. John Major is the leader of the Conservative Party, and you should allow him time to consider what is best for the Conservative Party.
Do you think leadership talk during the campaign damaged the campaigning effort?
I have no further comments on the campaign. I'm just very pleased that in Wokingham people have backed me again, and I will work very hard over the next 5 years to earn their trust.
Anne Perkins with John Redwood. And now it's time to hear again from our roving reporter at large, Frank Skinner.
Hello, I'm at the Thursday night dance at Podsey Civic Hall in West Yorkshire. And look at this, Tony's Tipple. Yeah, for any Labour supporters who are here tonight. And there's a picture of Sarah Brighton for some strange reason. But there's a slogan on the side, look, Labour's coming home. It's a clever slogan. I wonder where they got that idea. So I'm just going to ask a couple of dancers. Hello. Hello. Now, I don't know if you've heard the news, because you've been dancing all night, I imagine. Yeah. Apparently Labour are doing quite well. Keep moving, it's all right, I can stick with you. Yes.
Is that good news?
Is it unfortunate?
Very, for us. Yeah.
Right, so you voted Conservative, I take it. Right, okay. Well, it's not definite yet, I mean, you still, live in hope. Yeah. So what do you think of Mr. Blair?
He's okay, he's understood it's the problem.
Right.
Mr. Prescott.
Oh yeah, you don't like him?
Yeah, bloody does.
Can he not dance?
Fun? I don't know if he can or not.
I've noticed that neither manifesto mentioned come dancing, whether that was going to keep going or not. So that wasn't very good, was it? So basically, you're more Lionel Blair than Tony Blair, is that fair?
No, not really.
Okay, thanks. Nice to talk to you. Hello?
Hello.
You all right?
Yes,
now, I don't know if you've heard any news, but the prediction is that Labour might well get in tomorrow. Is that good news?
No.
Yeah. It is for me.
It
Is
is
it?
for me.
Oh, it's a bit of a split. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Are you married?
No.
We were.
Oh right. Oh, you didn't split up over politics, I hope. Did you?
No,
we did,
no.
yeah.
Oh, couldn't even agree on that.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't.
So, what do you think of Mr. Blair?
I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a nice guy, nice enough guy and everything. But I don't think he'd make a good Prime Minister.
No.
No.
He'd have made a good ballroom dancer, wouldn't he? Because he's got that fixed smile that ballroom dancer. You know
It's
that.
very nice. It's very nice, cheeky. Yeah.
Oh, he's cheeky.
Cheeky smile.
But
yeah.
we need a cheeky Prime Minister, don't you think,
Do you
for a
think
change?
so?
Because he's a nice bloke, John, but he's not cheeky.
No, he isn't.
They're all the same.
Are they?
Yeah, they say what they want to think.
Yeah, I
They
suppose
say
you're
what
right.
what we want to think, you know.
Yes.
And then they change their mind.
Yes.
I think they do.
That's
Anyhow.
so true. Anyway, don't let me stop you dancing, and thanks a lot. Okay, cheers. So there you are. The public of Podsey have spoken.
Frank Skinner, they're reporting, and he'll be back later on. He's whirring around the country tonight. Now, let's come back to the business in hand. Some Labour gains. First of all, Thanet South. Jonathan Aitken, who resigned as Chief Secretary to the Treasury so that he could pursue a legal action against The Guardian, has been defeated in Thanet South. It's very difficult to say that, isn't it? By 15% swing. Richmond Park, a Liberal Democrat gain. Jeremy Hanley defeated. This is Richmond in Surrey. It's been renamed Richmond Park. The Liberal Democrats have been hankering for that seat for a long time, and Jennifer Tong takes it from the junior minister, briefly chairman of the Conservative Party, Jeremy Hanley. Hastings and Rye, a Labour gain. They come from third place to top place. Jackie Late defeated. She's been there since '92. First woman whip for the Tory party. Labour gains St Albans. A swing there of 15%. David Rutley defeated, and Kerry Pollard again coming up from third position, and Tory and Liberal Democrat fall one. So again, a good night for Labour in St Albans. The state of parties now, let's just have a look at that. Just coming up to 10 to 4, and we've had 505 results in, 373 Labour, well past the 330 seats they needed for an overall majority in the new House, up 123 so far. The Conservatives hanging way back on 90, down 146. The Liberal Democrats on 31, up 19, and they're doing well tonight. National Party's up 3, others up 1. And the forecast, based on those 506 results now, with 153 to come, a new House of 659 in all, a Labour majority of 187, the biggest ever Labour majority. It's hard to see how they're all going to fit onto the government benches in the House of Commons. Peter Snow will no doubt be demonstrating for us soon how difficult it will be. Conservatives are heading for the lowest seats total since 1906. Liberal Democrats predicted to achieve their best third-party results since 1929. Here are some of the key losers tonight. One of the people who hope to challenge for the leadership of the party, perhaps, Michael Portillo, the Defence Secretary, defeated. Malcolm Rifkin, the Foreign Secretary, out. Ian Lang, the Trade Secretary, defeated. Michael Forsyth, the Scottish Secretary. William Rawlgrave, Treasury Secretary. And Norman Lamont, former Chancellor of the Exchequer, having a stab at Harrogate, defeated. David Mellor in Putney, out. Jonathan Aitken, former Minister, out. Sir Marcus Fox, chairman of the Backbench 1922 committee, defeated, the man who would have organised the leadership election if John Major stands down, and the Social Security Minister, Alistair Burt. And a win for Martin Bell in Tatton. As independent, we'll be hearing from him in a moment. Tony Blair, the Labour leader. The support that's been given to us tonight has been given so that we can build one country, one nation, one society. And John Major, the Prime Minister, tonight we've been comprehensively defeated. We'll listen to the voice of the electorate and reflect on it. Michael Portillo said, "This is a truly terrible night for the Conservatives. I would have liked the chance to help rebuild the party." He being outside the House of Commons now and says he will do what he can from the wings. Kenneth Clarke, Chancellor of the Exchequer, "For us to fall into mutual recriminations would be folly. We've got to pick ourselves up and lose with dignity from a possible challenger for the leadership when that battle comes." And this is how the news came to us during the night. These are the highlights of a very dramatic turnaround in British politics, the most dramatic scenes we've seen certainly since the war. Stevenage, the Follets appear to be about to celebrate their victory there with a Grand Prix size bottle of champagne, which won't open. Well, there we are. I think the thing to do is shake it and just see if the cork will pop out. No. There's going to be the most terrible explosion in a moment. This is the agony of celebrating victory in Stevenage.
This is the most interesting photo opportunity of the entire election campaign.
Ken Follett there, the very successful writer. I think it's time to listen to a chorus of Things Can Only Get Better from the Festival Hall and leave them to their fate in Stevenage. They'll obviously be better off with orange juice. Dee Ream playing the song that they played right through the campaign that drove people on the campaign bus mad. Needless to say, this is Labour's celebration while extra hands are brought in to Stevenage to try and open the cork. We'll keep you abreast of Stevenage as the night goes on. They were called champagne socialists, but they're clearly very incompetent champagne socialists. Perhaps they're not really champagne socialists at heart at all. The Follett family are quite incapable of opening a bottle of champagne. We'll go back there during the evening as no, it's broken. That's it. That's it. Right. Francine Stock from the Royal Festival Hall. I hope the Labour Party there has been rather more successful.
There have been no problems whatsoever in opening these champagne bottles here, and it's flowing very freely. As you can hear behind me, things have definitely warmed up since we had that set from Dream, and there's a lot of dancing, a lot of singing, actors and actresses, people from the world of entertainment, all sorts of people piling in, and now the first of the heavyweights from the former Shadow Cabinet, now part of the government itself, Robin Cook is with me.
Good evening.
Good evening. Robin Cook.
Nobody's going to call Ken and Barbara champagne socialists ever again after that performance.
Never in your wildest kind of projections would you have imagined a majority this large?
No, I mean, I did get into trouble for saying the word landslide 6 weeks ago. I guess I can use that word safely now, but none of us ever imagined that it was going to be on this scale. And I must say, I find myself both tremendously encouraged but moved by the trust which the British people have put in the new Labour Party. And we must now work hard to make sure we deliver on that trust.
But no doubt about it, the biggest cheer of the evening here came when Mr. Mortillo lost his seat. I mean, there's also, it is a rejection vote as much as an endorsement of you.
Oh, I think what happened tonight is a reflection of three things. First of all, the tremendous leadership of Tony Blair, who has shown the world that he can lead the Labour Party, and Britain now wants that leadership in charge number 10. Secondly, Labour fought on the issues that affect the lives of the real people out there: health service, education, jobs. And thirdly, yes, the country looked at the Tory party, they saw a divided party with a weak leader, and they recognised that such a party is not fit for government.
So here you are with a much, much larger majority than expected. How is that going to affect the complexion of the future Labour government?
Well, first of all, it is not going to affect the policies in which we fought this election and in which the people have given us a mandate. As Tony Blair has said, we will deliver on what we promise, and we will repay the trust of the British people by sticking to our word. As to the future, of course, it will be very valuable to us to have what I think anybody's going to recognise as a working majority.
Splendid. Okay, thank you. And we're back with us now. but is it surely not going to mean that you could be, will it mean you could be more radical?
More radical? Well, Tony Blair has already said that in government we may be more radical than people think, but by that he meant that people had not fully grasped just how much our policies add up to. We are going to deliver a just society based on fairness. We are going to deliver an economy in which there's opportunity for the many, not privilege for the few. And we're going to deliver a renewed democracy which brings power back to the people. That's a radical package, but it is a radical package on which we fought this election.
Robin Cook, thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Liz.
They finally, just to keep you up to date with this big event in Stevenage, they finally found a corkscrew and rather perilously opened the champagne bottle with that, and now they're celebrating the privilege of going back to the House of Commons with a huge majority, 423 seats we think Labour is going to have, a majority of 187, Barbara Follett there celebrating. So, Peter, I'm very worried about this House of Commons. How is Labour going to fit on the government benches?
You're not half as worried as I am. I hope we're going to get the doors open. Having watched that scene in Stevenage, I hope we're going to get the doors of the House of Commons open. So just hold your breath while I try for it. Yes, we're all right. Now then, this is the opposition benches over here, David, and we're going to see John Major on those opposition benches with our latest forecast at 163, the fewest Conservative MPs we've seen since the beginning of the 20th century. Here is the Liberal Democrat score. Paddy Ashdown is going to have no fewer than 44 MPs under his command there. 29 others, of course, including Martin Bell. There's the winning post coming up now, the 330 line you have to cross. And here comes Tony Blair's Labour Party, spinning along through the winning post right the way past with 423 MPs. Now, of course, they won't all fit on that side. Some of them have to come round and sit on the opposition benches. They won't fit on the government side, all those 423. However, let's look at the majority you'll have anyway over all the opposition parties. There we are, 423 versus 236, a Labour majority of 187. Take you into Downing Street now and just look how that compares with previous records. Here we have our pictures on the stairs of former Prime Ministers. There's Clement Attlee back in 1945 with a majority of 146. Labour Prime Minister with the biggest majority so far. There's Margaret Thatcher with the biggest Tory majority so far, 144 in 83. And now here we have Tony Blair with a majority forecast, at this moment anyway, forecast 187. So just look how he sits compared to his predecessors. The biggest majority since the war by any party. David.
Well, Peter, thanks very much. Robin Oakley, look, you sit there day in, day out watching the House of Commons and seeing the Tory party in the acute difficulty it was, ending up with a majority of -1. What happens when Labour goes in there with a majority of, what are we saying now, nearly 200, 187?
Well, Labour will have their problems, of course. For example, on pushing through their legislation on devolution, so many of their English MPs are not really interested in all of that. They will have their troubles on Europe, just as the Conservatives have done, but not on anything like the same scale, because Europe on the Labour side, while there are some potential rebels on issues like the single currency, it doesn't have that same sort of gut quality that has upset the Tories so badly. They don't look on it, the problems with Europe in the same way on a basis of sovereignty. It's more like just another economic issue.
But I'm thinking more of Tony Blair as Prime Minister. I mean, we know there is still a rump. It may not be a rump, we don't know until they get there, but of old Labour, of people who feel that Tony Blair, I mean, at the far extreme, somebody like Dennis Skinner, who described him as a traitor to the Labour Party. There are people in the Labour Party who will want to make trouble if they think they can do it without destroying the party. I mean, would he be uneasy about the scale of the majority he's got?
I don't think he will be.
Past Labour leaders used to rather like having a small majority, didn't they?
Yes, as I was saying earlier, it tends to act as some kind of discipline. But Tony Blair's Labour Party has been very much made in his image. He's doubled the membership of the party since he has been leader. Many of these new Labour candidates who are coming in are fully subscribing Blairites. The old left is a diminishing force in Labour's ranks. This is a leader of the Labour Party who has had a greater control over his shadow cabinet, over the national executive and over the party conference than any Labour leader before him. And he's already started a process of reforms on the party conference and on the national executive to make sure that the National Executive doesn't become a focus of opposition in the way it has done under past Labour governments. So he's thought his way through a lot of this already. Tony Blair is somebody with the ambition not just to win one election, but to be the first Labour leader actually to maintain power through 2 full terms.
What about the Tories? I mean, what's there left to lead, and who will be doing it? Do you think I mean, Michael Heseltine was saying he wanted John Major to stay. That can't be true, surely. I mean, John Major can't stay as leader, can he?
The Tories are now in an extraordinary state. Everybody that we've spoken to tonight on the programme has said, well, we've got to regroup. But regroup as what? Do they regroup as a Eurosceptic party when, for example, the Liberal Democrats, as the most pro-European party, have had their most successful election ever? Do they regroup fighting devolution when they won't have a single Welsh or Scottish MP to maintain that fight against devolution? They seem to have lost out on a number of the key issues. They've got to really rethink their position from the start now.
And who do you think will be leading them? Well, who would be the best person to lead them?
I think it's very difficult for them to work out on the leadership now. They've got to look really at the strength of the different forces when they come back, and the conventional wisdom has been that the smaller the Conservative Party that is returned after this election, the less will be the strength of the Eurosceptics. So maybe it isn't going to be such a shoo-in for a right-wing Eurosceptic contender as we originally thought. I think William Hague's chances have enormously improved because it looks as though Labour will be there for a couple of terms. Michael Heseltine's chances of being the new leader have probably diminished because people will say, Labour majority of 180, 190, they're there for 2 terms, we need somebody who can fight a long fight. He's not going to be around that long in politics. So William Hague, as a 36-year-old who appeals to right and left in the party, his chances must have improved.
Tony King, do you think this historically will be seen as a watershed for the Tory party, or is it something that they will fairly swiftly recover from and regroup, as they've all been saying tonight?
I can't see how they can quickly regroup. As Robin Oakley has just been saying, there are such deep lines of division in the party, and they're in fact 2, and they're not quite the same. People talk about Europe all the time, and that's very profound. But there's also a division about the kind of building on Mrs. Thatcher's legacy that should go on. One of the party tricks you can play if you want to is get 2 Conservatives in the room and ask them what they think about the fall of Margaret Thatcher back in 1990. And one of them will think it was the end of civilization as we know it, and another will say, rejoice, rejoice. It was a wonderful occasion. The Conservative Party still hasn't come to terms with the kind of party it wants to be, a sort of Newt Gingrich American-style Republican Party of extreme anti-statism and individualism, or whether it wants to be the comfortable old one-nation Conservative Party.
You think
that we used to know.
as severe as that, do you, the division in the party?
There are a lot of people, of course, as there always have been in the Conservative Party, who quite comfortably straddle these kinds of divides. But those kinds of ideological divisions are just as deep today in the Tory party as they were in the Labour Party at the end of the 70s and the early 80s.
Okay. Now, Peter Kellner, we haven't heard from you for a bit about what you've been discovering about the way people vote and what the trends have been, because it's been such a monumental wipeout of Labour that really... of Tories, I mean, that it's really been almost irrelevant how it's gone in various parts of the country. It seems to have been a uniform smash.
But it's not uniform in terms of in terms of seats. We've seen the Tories wiped out in Wales and Scotland, but they've almost been completely wiped out as a party of urban Britain. In the last Parliament, 76 of more than 200 seats in the big cities, London, the big English cities, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Cardiff, and so on. 76 MPs were Conservatives. Now it looks as though only 18 of those seats will be Conservatives. No Tories in Cardiff, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Leeds, Sheffield after today, just 1 in Birmingham, Norman Fowler in Southern Coalfields, a dozen perhaps in London out of more than 70 seats. Now, given that the Tories don't control local government in any of these areas, given their membership is falling, it seems to me the Conservatives have a real problem in reconstructing themselves as a party, as a national party at all. Hardly there in urban Britain, not there in Scotland or Wales. They're now completely a party of the suburbs and shires of England.
But those things are temporary phenomena, aren't they? I mean, that's the result. You know, every constituency you go to, there'll be a Conservative Party regrouping and reforming. When you say they're now a party of the shires, not of the next election, I assume. Or do you think that this is some fundamental change?
Well,
you don't, surely.
Possibly not. I think the next 2 or 3 years will be crucial. If we get the normal mid-term anti-government swing in local elections, maybe the Conservatives can start to claw back their position. But over the last few years, they've been almost completely wiped out. Not just they've lost cities they used to control, they've been wiped out, and their membership is full. All the things which create a functioning party at local level, having councillors, having MPs, that has ceased to exist in large parts of Britain, and in particular in urban Britain. And I think that will make it incredibly difficult for them to rebuild their base.
Of course, we'll get the local council results for England tomorrow, and maybe that will show them making some gains, because they did very badly 4 years ago. So perhaps even there they'll gain one or two crumbs of comfort. Let's have a look at some of the Labour gains that we've had in recently. Northampton North, a 13% swing, the same old story. Now, this is Tony Marlow, the fellow in the blazer who stood behind John Redwood at the leadership campaign against John Major, stood with John Redwood, I should have said, when he challenged John Major a couple of years back. Jerry Hayes, colourful character, got into some problems just before the campaign began with some accusations in the News of the World, which he's engaged in a libel action about. But the swing against him is just the same as everybody else is suffering, 13% there, and the seats taken by Bill Rammell, so that probably didn't have any effect on him. A colourful character in the House of Commons. Giles Brandreth, who claims to have made the longest after-dinner speech, which went on for 12 hours, 30 minutes, and got him into the Guinness Book of Records, but must have had all the dinner guests falling asleep, waking up, having breakfast, and he was still there on his feet talking. Anyway, he's now going, I suppose he'll take up that sort of life again. 11% swing against him in Chester. And a Labour gain in Watford. Swing in Watford of 12%, and this is Claire Ward, only 24 years old, the youngest ever elected MP to Watford. Jeremy.
David, I'm joined now by the Home Secretary, Michael Howard, from his count. Mr. Howard, what does it feel like to be part of an endangered species?
Well, this is a dark night for the Conservative Party. And I congratulate Mr. Blair on winning a very famous victory. But I think we should remember that he won that victory by promising not to dismantle the achievements of 18 years of Conservative government. I am proud of those achievements. I'm proud to be a Conservative. And the task of the Conservative opposition in the next Parliament will be to protect those achievements and to come up with new ways of meeting the challenges which will face the country, but ways which are consistent with and consistent and constant to our principles.
What will you tell the Prime Minister tomorrow or whenever you talk to him about how long he should stay leading the party?
I have always supported John Major. I will continue to support him for as long as he wishes to remain leader of the party.
So you won't stand for the leadership?
I will support John Major for as long as he wishes to remain leader of the Conservative Party.
If there were a vacancy, you would stand for it?
There is no vacancy, and I repeat, Jeremy, I will support John Major for as long as he wishes to remain leader of the party.
Well, there will be a vacancy, perhaps jolly soon. Will you stand for it?
There is no vacancy at the moment, as I say, I will support John Major for as long as he wishes to remain our leader.
After that, all bets are off?
There is no vacancy at the moment.
Right. What do you think, in policy terms, was your biggest mistake?
I don't think there is very much to be gained tonight by looking back. I want the Conservative Party to come together in this dark hour and to begin to look forward.
Right, okay.
I think that is a much more constructive approach.
Fine, all right. Looking forward, which policies do you have to change?
Well, I don't think that's a very sensible question to attempt to answer at 4 o'clock in the morning in the aftermath of these general election results. We will want to pause, we will want to reflect, and we will want to come up with new ways consistent with our principles of meeting the challenges which face the country. After all, it is the Conservative Party which has produced all the ideas which are now accepted on all sides of British politics as the best solutions. We've had a great defeat tonight. It is a dark night for the party. But all the ideas which others now talk about originated in the Conservative Party. And that intellectual path blazing is something which we shall continue to do.
Michael Howard, thank you. David?
Thank you.
I said that Claire Ward at 24 was the youngest MP ever. Before you start sending in postcards saying Pitt the Younger was Prime Minister at 24, let me say I meant the youngest in this Parliament. Now, Peter, we haven't looked at the Liberal Democrats for a bit, and they have been doing spectacularly well compared with at the last election. Can we have a look at how things are going for them?
They certainly have. I mean, they were one of their longer shots, as Michael Howard and Folkestone Hythe, but they just missed that one. Here, let me reintroduce you to the swingometer that shows the Tory MPs vulnerable to a swing to the Liberal Democrats over here. The average swing over the country as a whole to the Liberal Democrats along this gold line here is only 5%. You see, that kind of swing doesn't knock off many Tories, nor does a swing of really 4% or so more than that. This is where it gets very exciting for the Liberal Democrats, up here. And it's actually in seats like that, target seats for the Liberal Democrats, where they've been scoring very, very big swings indeed. Some remarkable swings. And it's all because of this tactical voting that's going on. Look at the swing in Newbury and Harrogate and Kingston. All the seats that they needed to pick up, very nearly all of them, they're actually picking up. They're very successful concentration of opposition votes to beat the Tory in each case. Now, here's the Lib Dem battleground. Those are the target seats they're after. Those are their existing seats. Let's just see what's happened overall now for the Liberal Democrats. There we are. There's their old parliamentary representation there, just 18 seats in the old House of Commons, and there are 50 target seats here. What's happened so far? These are the ones that declared, a few blanks still to be filled in, but they're holding all their old seats except 2 that they've lost to Labour, as we've heard earlier, and some that they're also losing to Labour, but not losing to Labour, but failing to take because Labour have taken them. Ceredigion again holding on with Plaid Cymru. The Tories holding on in places like Eastbourne and Wells and Dorset Mid, but all the other ones really going down to the Liberal Democrats. And we forecast that they'll hold 16 of their current seats and that they will capture a huge number of their target seats. We're going to have to bunch them together so we can see quite clearly how many they're going to gain. There we are. They're going to gain 29, we reckon, of their target seats to add to 16 of their existing seats, total of 45, twice the number any Liberal or Liberal Democrat leaders had since before the war.
Thanks, Peter. A couple of lucky Tories. Douglas Hogg, the Agriculture Minister, holds on in Sleaford, and Theresa Gorman very nearly defeated in Billericay, a huge swing against her, 18% swing against her, majority down from 21,000 to 1,300 in Billericay. But anyway, she made it. Jeremy.
Thank you, David. David Steele, 44 or so seats. How come you suddenly learned how to play first-past-the-post politics?
Well, I think it's a great achievement. I mean, I told you earlier, I sat in a parliament with 6 Liberals on the bench. The whole system of the House of Commons is going to have to change to accommodate a serious third party, not just a small minority irritant, but a party of between 40 and 50 seats really can't be treated the way that we have been over all these years. This is the best result since 1929, the flapper election of 1929. It's a great tribute to all those who've concentrated their fire on getting basically the same amount of votes that we got last time, but a lot more seats.
You might have done even better had you abandoned the pantomime that you were contesting every seat in Britain and hoping to form a government.
We had that argument, I seem to remember, during the campaign.
Yeah, you were maintaining stalwartly, that you were hoping to form a government.
No, I didn't say that. What I said was we had to fight all the seats because the weight that we have in the House of Commons is backed up by the national vote.
The interesting thing is that when you stand against Labour, as we saw in Rochdale tonight, as we saw in Oldham, to a lesser extent in Inverness, you actually lose.
Well, the Labour tide throughout the whole country has knocked 1 or 2 of our seats out as well, and that's very sad, but I don't think there was much we could do to resist that tide. But the fact is that we have benefited from the anti-conservative swing, the mood for a change, and what we now have to do is to convert what has been a tiny minority party in the House of Commons into a serious parliamentary party of 40 to 50 people. That isn't going to be easy. It's a tough task that Paddy Ashton has ahead of him.
It's also quite difficult when, as you conceded earlier, with this kind of majority, Labour doesn't need you, and they have also demonstrated that you can't really harm them.
I think, as Stephen Twigg said in his thank you speech, though, they're well aware that they benefited in a lot of their seats from the tactical vote. And he openly acknowledged the Liberal Democrat support that he had, and I think that's true in quite a number of the seats. So I think there will be a certain amount of goodwill between the parties across the floor of the House, and I hope that that will show itself in particular in changing the procedures. There's also the issue of what will happen in Scotland, where we now have no Conservatives at all, and we have major legislation coming up to recreate the Scottish Parliament. Now, I believe the Conservative Party seriously misread the situation in Scotland from John Major downwards. The whole lot of them. It was the wrong tactic. They simply went against the grain of Scottish opinion, and now we're landed with a situation where we are going to have to be the opposition to the Labour Party in doing this legislation, try and make it right.
David Steele, thank you.
Theresa Gorman's result in Billericay. I said she just managed to hold on, and here is how she did it. Majority down to 1,356. The swing against her, 18%. Labour in second place on 20,000. And Theresa Gorman spoke at her count after the announcement of the result.
I will thank too all of those people on the doorsteps of Billericay and Wickford and Pitsea and Leindon who time and again endorsed my view that we should keep the pound, that we should keep our independence, and that we should keep our border controls. And it is those policies which I shall continue to support in the new House of Commons. And I really do believe that the new Conservative Party grouping in the House of Commons will reinforce and restate those values, which I think are dear to the heart, not just of my constituency, but to the whole of the British nation. Thank you.
And Alan Clark's result in the safest Conservative seat in the United Kingdom, Kensington and Chelsea, but his majority down from 21,000 to 9,000, a swing of 13%. Alan Clark, who left the House of Commons at the last election and comes back in after publishing his notorious and successful diaries, on a swing of 13%. He's outside the Conservative Central Office in Smith Square with John Sopel.
Alan Clark, I wonder what your diary entry would be for tonight.
Well, it's a catastrophe for the party, of course. But, you know, we can't whinge about it. I mean, if the electorate speak, they speak. You've got to listen.
What happens now?
Well, I think the Conservative Party has got to have a period of quiet reflection and preferably well-disciplined, not slanging each other and certainly not getting into sort of competing positions in some future post.
The party was slanging each other when it was in government. It didn't even wait for opposition.
No, sure.
Presumably you think there's little chance of a seemly debate quietly done now, do you?
Well, I would hope there might be, because they've just got... This will bring them to their senses, I hope.
Is there a position on Europe, do you think, that the party can unite around?
Well, it'll have to find that position, won't it? I mean, if it can't, it is so much fewer in number now that if it can't unite, it really won't count for anything. So this has got to concentrate its mind.
Who should be the next leader?
Oh, that's a ridiculous question. I mean, we've got a leader, John Major. You heard him speak earlier. He spoke in the most moving way. He was head and shoulders above anybody else. And the idea that you just got to throw a leader out simply because he loses an election is quite new.
But it would be quite understandable if he felt that the last thing he wanted to do was...
If he feels he wants to go, that's down to him. But that's quite different from the party rejecting him, which I hope they won't do.
So you think it would be in the best interest of the party for John Majors to stay on?
Oh, it certainly would, yeah.
For how long?
Well, that's a matter for him and to decide himself, and for the way the situation turns out. But right now, I very much hope he doesn't do anything precipitate. I think it would be a great pity.
I mean, you're a great historian of the Conservative Party. It's never been very kind to people who've lost elections.
Well, no, it sometimes holds on to them for a bit.
What's a bit?
Well, how long did Ted last? He lasted about...
A year?
Yes, a year. I mean, I think you must have at least a year of quiet contemplation and discipline, and probably not a very high profile. I mean, we've excited a very large swing against us. I don't think the public expect us to overperform now.
All right, Alan Clark, many thanks indeed.
Thanks.
David.
And we go down to Welwyn and Hatfield, where the count is just about to be announced, the result of it. Anna Ford is there. Anna? Well, David Evans is standing second left from the end there. I don't know whether Anna Ford can hear me. If she can.
Yes, I can, David.
Oh, good. Anna, take us through all this. What's the likely outcome of this?
The likely outcome is, I think, that Melanie Johnson is going to sweep the board, but we shall have to wait until the returning officer tells us the result. I think David Evans really has suspected all day that he was going to lose. He's certainly been looking far more gloomy off camera than he was on camera earlier this evening. And I think he blames the leadership of the Tory party and also the fact that they have let people down by breaking so many promises.
Michelle. I, Michelle Saminaden, being the acting returning officer for the constituency of Welwyn Hatfield, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election held on 1st May 1997 was as follows. Cox, Victor Ernest, Justice for Residents of Welwyn Hatfield, 1,263. Evans, David John, the Conservative Party candidate, 19,341. Harold, Helen Teresa, Pro-Life Alliance, 267. Johnson, Melanie Jane, the Labour Party candidate, 24,000. Now, 24,936. Schwartz Rodney Scott, Liberal Democrat, 7,161. And that Melanie Jane Johnson has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency of Welwyn Hatfield.
The millionaire David Evans, who owns Luton Town Football Club, and has been rude about everybody, including Virginia Bottomley on his own side, and his Labour opponent, who is extremely rude about her and her 3 children, has been defeated on a swing of 11%. Been the MP there since 1987. Himself a former professional footballer, very outspoken, always in the House of Commons, referring to his wife Janice and her views on things. So let's hear the speech from Melanie Johnson, a school inspector and a magistrate.
It's been a tremendous night for people in Welwyn Hatfield and in Britain. I think this has been a very historic occasion, and it's almost one that's too much to take on board in one evening. The people of this country and in this constituency have made a break with the past and taken a tremendous step into a new future with the Labour Party. This is going to be a future where many will benefit, and we will have a society where people are included rather than excluded. It will be a future where education is the top priority, where the health service is nurtured for all, and where people...
Well, she was one of the women-only shortlist, about which we didn't hear very much after it had begun, when it was declared illegal. But there are a number of women who've got through tonight, who got through because of that women-only shortlist into the Labour Party. How are they running so far, Peter?
Well, there's going to be a revolution in the representation of women in the Commons, David. Let's just look inside the chamber and look at the number of women who were in the old House of Commons and compare that with the number who we expect now to be in the new House. Now, here we are just taking a bird's eye view and we'll just pick out the women in the old House here. Women MPs on the Labour side, first of all, they're where they're just clocking up there, 39 of them, and on the Conservative side there were 18. Now, we estimate that in the new House of Commons, looking at the Labour figure first, as you say, all women shortlists and the other seats that have been gained by Labour, 44 gains for Labour in terms of women in the House of Commons, something like doubling their representation. The Tories down 4, not surprisingly, but when you add on the Liberal Democrats expected to have women MPs and the SNP as well, the total down here then is 114, up 51. So it literally is just about double the number of women in the House of Commons. David.
Peter, thanks very much. Robert Atkins defeated, incidentally, the man who became briefly a minister, but also the man who plotted or planned with John Major how John Major would capture the leadership on a barge holiday. Anyway, he lost his seat in South Ribble. Now, Jeremy Vine joins us from the Festival Hall. Jeremy.
Thank you very much indeed, David. Yes, we're outside the Royal Festival Hall where a crowd is beginning to gather in anticipation of Mr. Blair's arrival here. We gather he's about 25-30 minutes away. You can see the podium there that he'll be standing on and making a speech to what will be not just the press that you can see there, but also people who are inside the hall partying. They're about to come out to hear him. He'll make his way down here. He'll speak to the nation. He'll go inside again then and speak to his staff and thank them for all the work that they've done.
Now,
Jeremy,
Jeremy, just tell me before you go in there.
Well, inside it's getting increasingly noisy. People are now dancing a great deal, and I have to say the atmosphere is getting very relaxed and quite sultry in some corners of the hall. Gordon Brown has now arrived. Peter Mandelson has now arrived. It's very much that everybody's now expecting Tony Blair, and the expectation is, as you already know, that he will arrive in a few minutes' time.
Francine, how many people are there in truth at the Festival Hall? Can you hear me all right? How many people are there really?
Well, I don't have one of those brains that can actually count immediately, but I would say there are probably about 1,200 or so.
I mean, is it a serious big party with all London rushing down to the Festival Hall to celebrate Labour's victory at 4:30 in the morning, or is it the usual suspects having their celebration having been let out of Millbank at the end of the campaign?
Oh no, not at all, and it hasn't been from the outside. Obviously, there were a lot of party workers there from at the beginning. Gradually, the various sort of celebrities, large numbers of the cast of EastEnders and so forth came on. And now I would say that people who've been to other election night parties are coming on afterwards. And most immediately beside me now, I now have Peter Mandelson. Peter, now you don't tend to show a great deal of emotion about these things, however, you're allowed it now.
I'm very, very happy, very relieved and very exhilarated. Not just for all the people here, because they've done all the work, they've made this victory possible, but I'm very excited for the country, obviously, as well.
Now, you are, of course, the architect of this whole campaign.
I'm one of them. I'm not the sole architect of anything.
But you won't be short of an opinion on this. What do you think was the point? What was the particular point that caused such a dramatic victory?
I think the main point is the creation of New Labour. You know, however awful the Tories are and all their divisions and their dogma and their drift, and heaven knows the country wanted to shake them off a long time ago. But it took the creation of New Labour and the final transformation of the party after this long 10-year struggle to remake ourselves that clinched it. People felt they could trust the Labour Party again. We were safe. They could come home to us. And when that happened, we were away.
But there are so many of you now that it's not going to be beyond possibility that you'll have your own divisions within the party. But I mean, in a sense, the struggle's just beginning.
Well, if there are little fissures appearing, I have every confidence that the BBC will be able to make them that little bit wider and create problems for ourselves. But you know, we have a very clear programme. I mean, we worked out our manifesto, we published it a year ago. It received the full backing of our party on a one-member, one-vote ballot. And what people need to understand is that having been elected as New Labour, we are going to govern as New Labour. Nothing more and nothing less than the manifesto which the people of our country have voted for today.
It's a good party here, obviously at the moment.
Great party.
Festival Hall. Is there a personal choice, presumably here, because the whole question of the Festival of Britain and Herbert Morrison, your relative's role in it?
Well, I don't know whether, having managed this campaign, I'm going to exceed the majority gained by my own grandfather when he managed the Labour campaign in 1945. I don't know. I think a little bit of family pride would suggest that, would encourage me in thinking that perhaps we can get an even bigger majority in 45. I don't know. All I know is that we have now regained the trust of the British people, and we're not going to betray it.
And if you had to describe what the general complexion, demeanour of the new Labour government with this very large majority is going to be, how would you do that?
Very sober, very responsible, our feet placed very firmly on the ground, but now ready to roll up our sleeves and get on with the job.
Peter Mandelson, thanks very much.
Well, it certainly does look as if he is going to exceed the Labour majority. It was 136 in 1945, and they're heading for a majority of 183 now. Of course, the House of Commons is a little bit bigger, but not that much bigger. It's going to be a record night for the defeat of cabinet ministers, with the news that Tony Newton has been defeated in Braintree. The seat's been gained by Alan Hurst. Tony Newton, who was the leader of the House, a man who's been in office continually since 1979, when the Tories came in with Mrs. Thatcher, defeated on a 13% swing from Conservative to Labour. Good. Peter, how are we doing now?
Well, I mean, Labour are doing extraordinarily.
Well, indeed, but who have you got for the chop?
Well, I'll cover that in just a moment. If I may just quickly show you the pattern of colour building up in the country now. Just look how it is incredible how Labour is coming back in the home counties in London and all around here in the Midlands. There's Martin Bell in Tatton, surrounded by Labour seats, just a few Tories there up in rural Cheshire. With the Liberal Democrats on 23 gains. Here they are, all flashing away now. You can see the Liberal Democrat gains flashing away, the Isle of Wight, Portsmouth, South, Colchester, just about everywhere there. Liberal Democrats doubling their representation of the Commons. But it's, of course, Labour who are really on the move there. Tremendously successful election for Tony Blair, beating all the records. And here we have our final forecast of the way the country will look at the end of the day, with 45 Liberal Democrats and 421 Labour MPs. I mean, Labour have never been above 400 in history. Now, apart from Michael Portillo, we mentioned earlier there were quite a lot of personalities in the Tory party who are standing under that cliff, which, if it was a Labour landslide, would fall on top of them. Let's just see what's happened. There's our dicey dozen. We've had, let's see, 9, 10 of them now. Their seats have been declared, 2 more to come. What's happened? Well, there it goes. The landslide, the Labour landslide, has buried no fewer than 9 of the 10 of our dicey dozen so far. Just going to have a quick look at who they are. You'll recognise Jerry Hayes there on the right. Now, he's had the worst defeat of all. That's why he's up to his neck there. There's Tony Marlow in Northampton North. There's Giles Brandreth, Michael Forsyth, the Scottish Secretary, another Cabinet Minister Ian Lang, another one, Malcolm Rifkin. And there is Nick Budgeon, David Mellor, another Cabinet Minister, Chief Secretary of the Treasury, William Waldegrave, and the Home Secretary, as I mentioned earlier, just surviving the Liberal Democrat surge. They didn't quite manage to get as far as him in Folkestone and Hyde. But, of course, it's gone beyond that, even beyond our so-called dicey dozen. The vulnerable Tories we thought might go down to a 9% swing. The swing, of course, has been far bigger than that. And it's carried with it people like Neil Hamilton in Tatton, as we saw earlier. There's the Norman Lamont, the former Chancellor. There's David Hunt in West Wirral. I mean, very, very safe seats, these, many of them. Marcus Fox and Shipley, he's gone down. Jeremy Hanley, beaten in Richmond Park. And finally, in Braintree there, Tony Newton going down to defeat in a really very, very safe Conservative seat, David. And, of course, Michael Portillo in Enfield Southgate. Devastating for them.
Thanks very much, Peter. Well, let's rejoin for a moment Frank Skinner.
Help me, David. I'm in a club for young people in Manchester and there's strange smoke in the air and I don't know what's going on. I've got E on my jacket and people keep asking me for things. And I'm so tired, someone outside thought I was Margaret Beckett. But anyway, here's some young people. What do you think about the election so far?
I think it's great. They deserve it.
Good, well, that's fair enough. What do you think, mate?
Yeah, I think it's cool as long as Labour is a change, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it will be a change. We'll find out this for the better or for the worse.
For the better, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Moved a little to the right, but let's see anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah, just a little bit, though. Is there any Tory voters here at all?
No Tories.
This is a fair Gallup poll for the whole nation there. What do you think, mate?
Well, they can all stand, but only one can deliver. One, Labour. That's it, sorry. That's all I can say.
That's pretty good stuff, though. I enjoyed that. So is there anyone who thinks that John Major will still have a good job in politics? What do you think?
absolutely not. I think he should retire gracefully.
Oranges and stockings for John Major.
They say cleaning the Houses of Commons is pretty nice, you know what I mean?
Okay then, well there you have the view of the youth of England. Bye, David.
Frank Skinner. And let's now hear from Martin Bell. He had a very healthy victory in Tatton over Neil Hamilton, 11,000 votes, and afterwards is talking to Vivian White.
I was expecting a wafer-thin margin one way or the other. The canvass I did tonight was just fantastic. It looked as if whole communities were moving over to me, but I still didn't know. And yes, I'm astonished and gratified and actually rather humbled by what happened here.
Neil Hamilton, your defeated opponent, said, as you heard in his speech, that when Sir Gordon Downey's full report on what actually took place is published, that he'll be vindicated. Now, you claim you stood as the independent candidate for higher standards in public life. Have you smeared and wrecked the reputation of Neil Hamilton?
No, I absolutely have not. I did not campaign at all on the charges that are not yet resolved. I campaigned on what was already out there in the public record, and I categorized that generally as conduct unbecoming to a member of Parliament, and that's out there, and that won't be affected by the Downey report.
If he should be vindicated, as he says he will, by Sir Gordon Downey, what will you do by then as the elected MP who replaced him?
Well, he can't be vindicated on what is already out there on the record. It's just not possible.
Have you any regrets at all, or none, for Mr. Hamilton and for his wife?
I have some sympathy for them in being hounded by the press. I've had a little bit of that since I announced, and it's been very difficult for them. But I have to say that I think to some extent Mr. Hamilton brought this upon himself, and for that matter, upon his party.
You claimed that you acted independently. Do you think that, nevertheless, you may have been used by both the Labour Party and by the Liberal Democrats nationally, and wonderfully distracted attention from many other issues during the campaign, so that they concentrated on the issue of, in quotes, sleaze instead?
Well, that would have gone away if, as I expected, Mr. Hamilton had withdrawn his candidature or been asked by his party to stand down. I expected 48 hours in politics, and it said it looks as if I got 4 and 5 years. But no, I have not been manipulated. I have not been used. I could not have won this if I hadn't got at least 10,000 Conservative votes. So I think I've been supported in almost equal numbers by voters who would normally vote with all three main parties.
When you arrive in Parliament, do you think MPs of all parties will have reason to be terrified of Martin Bell sitting there on the back benches, so independent of mind?
Well, he hasn't actually found a bench to sit on yet, because there isn't a crossbench. I think there'll be a certain amount of goodwill. I understand it's a clubbable sort of place. I shouldn't be a threat to any of them, and I see no harm in having the first real independent in Parliament in a couple of generations.
Let's have a look at the story in Wales. We've said the Tories are wiped out there. Glyn Mathias joins us from Cardiff.
Labour have long dominated the political map of Wales. Tonight they dominate it as never before. So far they've secured 34 seats out of the 40 seats in Wales. By comparison, the Conservatives face a wipeout. They secured just 18% of the vote. They've lost 7 seats, including those of 2 ministers. But the brightest Labour smiles came when they captured the safest Conservative seat in Wales, Clwyd West.
Roderick Richards, 13070. Gareth Thomas, 14918.
Rod Richards was the minister who resigned after allegations over his private life. Plaid Cymru, they managed to hold on to all 4 seats that they secured in 1992. There had been some question mark over one, Ynys Môn.
Jones, Ieuan Wyn, Plaid Cymru, 15,756. 15,756. Owen William Goronwy Vaughan, y Blaid Geidwadol, the Conservative Party, 8,569. 8,569. A datganaf yma bod Ieuan Wyn Jones wedi ei ethol fel aelod seneddol.
So Plaid Cymru held Ynys Môn, but they failed to secure their main target seat of Carmarthen East and Nefwr. The Liberal Democrats held on to Montgomeryshire, but they have to wait till tomorrow to find out whether they can capture Brecon and Radnorshire, the last seat to be declared in Wales. Little chance there of the Conservatives holding it.
Glyn Mathias from Cardiff. Well, now we're joined by the BBC's economics editor, who was up in Dunfermline with the man who's going to be Chancellor of the Exchequer, Gordon Brown, flew down with him to Stansted, and presumably on the way down had a chance to talk to him about what on earth he was going to do as Chancellor of the Exchequer, and maybe can tell us a little bit about that. Peter Jay. Peter, good evening. What did you garner on your journey down with Gordon Brown?
Well, he's obviously a very happy man, but he's also a man on whom the mantle of government was visibly descending. He was beginning to talk like a Chancellor. There seemed to be no question that he expected to go to the Treasury, indeed to be there probably by tomorrow afternoon. I think he was expecting that Tony Blair would be officially Prime Minister by about 2 p.m. and that he would be at his desk in the Treasury or number 11 studying the papers, talking to Sir Terence Byrne pretty soon after, that other cabinet and government appointments would be made over the weekend, and that by next week they would be fully at it. He was expecting to receive the Governor of the Bank of England at a meeting at the Treasury already set for the middle of next week. He wasn't going to tell me, needless to say, what decisions he would make about interest rates, but he will probably receive the same advice as Ken Clarke did, that interest rates, in the Governor's opinion, ought to be higher. And then he'll basically be getting down to work on his first budget, which he's promised to produce within a couple of months, which is partly, of course, to introduce the windfall tax. But the very important part of it in his mind are all the
Peter, let me interrupt you
things.
just a minute, and I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We've just got pictures of Paddy Ashdown arriving at Liberal Democrat Party headquarters, and great Lord Home there beside him, who planned the campaign. We want Paddy, the shouts are.
Okay. You can have Paddy in just a moment, but I wanted to say two thank yous. First of all, to Peter Boiseau, who's been a wonderful host this evening.
They're at the Pizza on the Park, which is run by Peter Boiseau, just by Hyde Park Corner in London.
And second, I want to say thank you to a terrific campaign team. We deserve this result, but it's you who work for it so hard who really get the credit. But most of all, the person who gets the credit, and he deserves it. What a campaign. Paddy.
So the Liberal Democrats heading for 45 seats in the new Parliament. 25 games. They've got 37 at the moment. They've only lost 2 seats. And on a vote of 16.5%, not nearly as good as they got last time in the popular vote, but in seats they've scored magnificently tonight. More than doubling their standing.
I see we brought the high-tech soapbox all the way, but not at this stage the helicopter. Richard, the whole of the campaign team, you have been absolutely stunning. I can't tell you what it's been like out there, and I know I speak for all my parliamentary colleagues, and there are now many more than there were before. The way that you have fought this campaign under the superb direction of Richard, who's done so stunningly for all of us. And now we have a lot of work to do. We are the largest force of Liberal Democrats and Liberals that this country has had since the days of Lloyd George. And we will use that force, we will use the vote that people have given us in the next Parliament with a hugely increased number of Liberal Democrat members of Parliament to fight every minute, every second, every hour through the next Parliament for those things that we have campaigned for in this election. Education and investing in education, tackling the crisis of our health service, bringing a new kind of honesty to our politics, and you know they told us we couldn't do it and win votes. But we did. And fighting now to be the cornerstone, the rock upon which we can build a new and modern constitution for our country that will begin to rebuild the bridge between the government and the governed, and bring about, ladies and gentlemen, bring about, colleagues, what I believe will be a parliament of historic reform in this country in the years ahead.
Norfolk South West declaring
Shepherd,
this is Gillian
Gillian
Shepherd's
Patricia,
seat.
Conservative. 24,694.
The Education and Employment Secretary just squeaking in Norfolk South West.
And that Gillian Patricia Shepherd has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency. The number of ballot papers rejected and not counted by me at this election were as follows. Want of official mark, 0. Voting for more than one candidate, 82. Writing or mark by which voter could be identified, 0. Unmarked or void for uncertainty, 313, giving a total of 395 votes. Thank you.
I would just like to thank very warmly the returning officer, his staff, the people who have counted the votes and who are here much later than they expected to be, the police for keeping us all safe during this campaign, my opponents with whom it has been possible to have a civilised and proper campaign and debate on a number of occasions, and of course, most especially, all my helpers, all my supporters, my agent, my family, and of course the many, many people who voted Conservative in South West Norfolk this time. Not for the first time, South West Norfolk has shown it has bucked a regrettable trend. This has been a remarkable night. It has been a historic night. But I'm delighted that it is a night that has been marked by South West Norfolk remaining true blue.
She's done well to hold on to Norfolk South West. The swing, 14% would have unseated her, and we've seen that kind of swing in other places. But she's held on. And meantime, at the Festival Hall, where at 10 to 5 in the morning, things are picking up a bit. John Prescott, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and Robin Cook on the left there, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, arriving at the Festival Hall to take part in these celebrations. And Tony Blair is on his way there. We expect him there just after 5 o'clock. We'll go there, of course, as soon as he's there. And Neil Kinnock, for whom this must be a bittersweet occasion when he thinks how close he came or might have come to this at the last election, now working in Europe as a commissioner and here celebrating with great good heart a really remarkable, quite extraordinary, beyond his wildest dreams anyway, victory for the Labour Party. And now we rejoin our economics editor, Peter Jay, who we were talking to a moment ago. Peter, before we were interrupted, just on the politics for a moment, did he say anything to you about the scale of this majority and express any concern about it, or simply jubilation?
Well, I don't think there's much doubt that he was thrilled by it. Obviously, like any thinking politician, he was aware of the fact that there would be quite a lot of people there, perhaps 100 members, who would regard themselves as having been somewhat freakishly elected, may not have even expected to be elected and might well not expect to be re-elected in any circumstances less favourable than those of this very remarkable result tonight, and that those might be people who were somewhat more difficult to discipline, control and predict than the ordinary run of more or less professional politicians who are to be found in the Labour Party and in most political parties nowadays.
So what's he got to decide immediately? Is he going to change the Governor of the Bank of England within a week or so? Do you know what he's going to do on any of these big issues?
I certainly don't know what he's going to do about the Governor of the Bank of England. I have no reason to think that he's going to change. He certainly seemed to expect to meeting him next week and to receiving his advice on interest rates and reaching his own decision. That is one of the big decisions he's got to make. He's got to decide whether he's worried about the extreme strength of the pound and the threat that that poses to the recovery. I don't think he is very impressed by the robustness or the success so far of Ken Clarke's recovery. I think he is very impressed by the strength of the economic recovery in the United States, Bill Clinton's recovery. He was interested in discussing how that had come about.
Peter,
we thought that probably Alan Greenspan had had a lot to do with that.
I'm going to have to interrupt you once again. I'm sorry, we're getting the result from Derbyshire South. Edwina Currie's seat, or at least up until this moment, Edwina Currie's seat.
Charles, Liberal Democrat, 5,408, 5408. Todd Mark Wainwright, the Labour Party candidate, 32,709. 32709. And I hereby declare that Mark Wainwright Todd has been duly elected to serve as the member for the said constituency.
Well, it can be no surprise to Edwina Currie that she's lost her seat there. It needed a tiny swing against her. It was number 20 in Labour's target, and instead of a tiny swing, she got a 13% swing against her. So Edwina Currie, forceful character, novelist. Remember, she was the person who was kicked out of office over the salmonella and eggs crisis. She's been the MP there since 1983. Very pro-European, very outspoken, supporter of John Major, very critical of those in the party who've made life difficult for him on the European front, and failed candidate for the European Parliament as well. So she is out. Tony Blair, in the meantime, is on his way down to London, flying in to go to the party at the Festival Hall with Sherry there, his wife, on the way down. Seems to be already at work. Cups of teas, not champagne. In fact, the whole way that Labour has treated this so far, apart from occasional bursts of energy at the Festival Hall on the Follett's failure to open a bottle of champagne at Stevenage, has been rather muted, as though they'd been so well disciplined for the campaign and so orderly that now that they've got a victory on a huge scale, they're rather staggered by it. Alistair Campbell, his press secretary there, also sipping a cup of tea. A serious moment for them as they plan what they're going to do when they go to number 10 and have to form a cabinet and then a whole government. But it's interesting that this spirit of rather modest determination through the campaign seems to have lasted. No exuberance, no sudden burst of energy. This is Tony Blair now arriving at the airfield at Stansted after that brief flight down from Sedgefield, where he had been at his count, and he's on his way to the Festival Hall, where we'll rejoin him. Photographers calling for him to be photographed. And outside the Royal Festival Hall, a crowd has now gathered, cheering and waiting for Tony Blair to arrive. Well, that's a bit sparklier than the scenes we saw before. Singing the campaign song, it can only get better. And as we come up to 5 o'clock in the morning and dawn just breaking over London, the sky turning blue, this crowd waiting for Tony Blair and Cherie Blair to arrive here. Trevor Nunn there, the theatrical director of the National Theatre. Now, Jeremy, you're Neil Kinnock and John Prescott there. Jeremy, we're going to get a political speech or a celebration here, do you think? It's rather either late at night or early in the morning for a heavy-going political speech, I should have thought. He must be talked out, isn't he?
Sorry, David, it's so loud here, I can't actually hear you. This is a massive celebration by these Labour staff members and supporters who've come here. We've seen pictures of Neil Kinnock and Peter Mandelson, the party strategist, John Prescott, the deputy leader, all staying off the stage at the moment, standing to the left of it, waiting for Mr. Blair, who we think is maybe about 10 minutes away.
Well, we'll go back to the festival hall when Mr. Blair arrives, and we'll hear his speech and see all those members of the shadow cabinet, soon to be the cabinet, who've arrived down there, and listen to what he has to say. But while we wait for that, Dr. Brian Mawhinney is with Emma Udwin at his count at Cambridgeshire North West.
Dr. Mawhinney, what do you put this extraordinary defeat down to?
The British people decided that it was time for a change. That is a very clear message from tonight's results. All over the country, it would appear at first sight that they looked for the candidate in this constituency that had the best chance of ousting a Conservative. And that's how they voted. And it has been a very good night for the Labour Party. I congratulate Mr. Blair and the Labour Party. I wish them well as they govern.
Well, you almost expect Neil Kinnock to say, we're all right. Peter Mandelson, who's no mean dancer himself, at the front there. Atmosphere building up as we wait for Tony Blair's arrival. Apologies to Brian Mawhinney, who we lost there in order to come back here. We'll go back to Brian Mawhinney in just a moment, but there are three of the most senior figures in the Labour Party: Neil Kinnock on the left, and John Prescott, the Deputy Leader, soon probably to be Deputy Prime Minister, and Peter Mandelson, the MP for Hartlepool, no post at the moment, the man who reinvented the Labour Party. And behind Peter Mandelson, Pauline Prescott, John Prescott's wife, Robin Cook. Between Kinnock and Prescott there. You can sense the feeling of exuberance and relief after the struggle to win this election, after the past 18 years when they've seen the Labour Party go from the disastrous defeats in 1983 and 87, and then the almost success of 92, which ended so badly for them with a apparent last-minute change in the mind of the electorate. And then this time round, when at the beginning of the campaign all these people who were working for the party were so uncertain and nervous about it and tense lest it go wrong, and one moment in the campaign when they thought perhaps it might start to unscramble, and then to discover not only has it not gone wrong, but it's exceeded their wildest dreams in terms of the kind of majority that Labour's going to get. 183 we're talking about now as the projected majority, and no wonder they're exuberant. Now let's rejoin Brian Mawhinney in Cambridgeshire North West, the chairman of the Conservative Party and the man who was the principal architect of their campaign.
It would appear at first sight that they looked for the candidate in this constituency that had the best chance of ousting a Conservative. And that's how they voted. And it has been a very good night for the Labour Party. I congratulate Mr. Blair and the Labour Party. I wish them well as they govern our country, for all of us want our country well governed. In opposition, we will support them when we think they're acting in the national interest. We'll oppose them with, I hope, rational argument when they are not, in our view. But all of that is for tomorrow. It's very clear that the British people decided that after 18 years, and irrespective of the fact that we've got the best economy, probably for 2 generations, that it was time for a change of government. And one of the strengths of our democracy is that you accept victory and defeat. I hope both with good grace.
Is there anything that you now wish you'd done differently in terms of policy or strategy?
Well, I heard you say earlier that most people will form a view that this was a reflection of the last 5 years in various aspects and not the last 5 weeks. And my instinct is that that was probably a right judgment. But we will get to all of those issues in due course.
Have you spoken to John Major? Are you urging him to stay on?
I have spoken to the Prime Minister on a number of occasions during the course of the evening, and you would expect me to give him any advice that he might or might not seek in private, not in front of the television.
What are your thoughts this evening for those colleagues who will not be returning to the House of Commons?
I'm very, very sad indeed. They have been good representatives of their constituents, some of them over many years. A number of them have served this nation illustriously.
Well, down at Tory party headquarters, Michael Portillo. The Defence Secretary has turned up, having lost his seat. William Hague, Welsh Secretary, one of the people who might well challenge for the leadership and who would have been a rival of Michael Portillo. And there's very prolonged applause for Mr. Portillo, who behaved very graciously at Enfield Southgate. And maybe is going to speak.
Thank you very much. Got consent. We're waiting for the Prime Minister.
Rather brief speech. And apparently, according to William Hague at any rate, they're waiting for the Prime Minister to come. I don't know whether we're expecting him to come tonight. We think they're both, John Major and Tony Blair, are going
What a night, huh?
to their headquarters, or rather Tony Blair going to the Festival Hall. So Tony King, what do you think as you watch these scenes? And we've talked at the very beginning of this programme, probably the last, well certainly now the last general election of this century, and it goes out on this note. How do you place this election in the sort of post-war years?
Well, it is certainly the most remarkable landslide, though as I said right at the beginning of the programme, I think landslide isn't quite strong enough a word that we've had since the war. How we're going to place this election is going to depend very much on the next few years, because we know very little about how a Labour government is actually going to operate, and we tend to judge elections retrospectively. One thing we can say, by the way, is that turnout is almost certainly going to be the lowest since the war. Brian Mulroney repeated the point about time for a change. I really think that the Conservatives ought not to comfort themselves in quite that way. Maybe it was time for a change 5 years ago. The core fact is that this government over time earned the contempt of the majority of the British people for the way it governed the economy in the first few years, for the sleaze that we've heard about several times tonight, for its disunity over Europe, and it also, I think, caused an awful lot of people to want to wreak revenge on the Conservative Party.
But that makes it, I mean, if that's the correct diagnosis, it makes it very difficult for them to find a way of recovery or getting back, because if it was a matter of resolving your views on a single currency, then it's a political point which you can have a battle about and maybe resolve or maybe not. But if it's about sleaze and incompetence and those kind of things, it's not that easy for them to change.
I think it's going to be very difficult indeed. Not only are they divided, but there are actually no clear lessons to be learned from this experience.
Except to sit around and wait for Labour to make a mistake.
It's almost as bad as that. The one point that I think one ought to add is that the Eurosceptics have been insisting all along that if only the government had adopted a firm, clear Eurosceptical line, the Conservatives would have done better. Well, an awful lot of individual Conservative candidates adopted exactly that line and said in their election addresses that they would oppose a single currency and so on. The results of tonight make it clear that those candidates have done just as badly as non-Eurosceptical candidates. There appear to have been no votes in Euroscepticism at all. We saw Norman Lamont go down, we saw Nick Budgeon go down, we saw Theresa Gorman in terrible trouble.
So, Robin Oakley, where do you think the fault lines are in the Tory party? I mean, if it's not just a matter of Euroscepticism or Europhilia, where are they actually going to, how are they going to sort themselves out?
Well, as you were saying earlier, the problem is that I think Slees had an awful lot to do with this defeat, in the sense that Time for a Change was a strong current already playing. It was playing at the last election. It seemed to be enough for the electorate at the last election that they'd changed Margaret Thatcher for John Major, and perhaps they bucked the odds in '92. But Slees and the way it accumulated through this Parliament fed into the whole idea of a tired old administration whose standards were slipping.
Do you think John Major has any feeling for that? Do you think he'll rue the day that he failed to be tougher from the start? I mean, on David Mellor, way back when he said he was going to stay and then he was forced to resign, and onwards through the Neil Hamilton affair, all the other people, the people who took cash for questions and didn't lose the Tory whip, all the catalogue of complaints, the 16 ministers or more who left his government. Do you think, looking back, he'll think, well, maybe I should have done it different?
Perhaps in retrospect he will, because it's always been his technique to set up commissions, inquiries, to have things sorted out over a period. Perhaps he should have been quicker and more decisive in tackling it.
Do you think he'll think that?
I think he may well, as he analyses what has gone wrong for the Conservatives over this period. It may well be something that he thinks he could have handled in a different way.
As always at public events down at the Royal Festival Hall, there are false starts. We thought that Tony Blair was arriving, but we haven't been able to see him, but we'll keep an eye on that. And rather like the last night of the proms, any movement on stage, I think, leads to applause. But we'll keep it up there on the screen, and we're also keeping an eye for Smith Square, where John Major is expected to arrive. And the moment either does, there is the sign of a rather grand motor car arriving, which may well be Tony Blair. I think it is. Already signs of a security operation going on around him. But Tony Blair and Cherie Blair. Tom Sawyer just behind there with Alistair Campbell slapping each other on the back, the General Secretary of the Labour Party, and he goes down through the line of his supporters. And you can see here what a personal triumph this is for Tony Blair, and is going to be treated as a personal triumph for Tony Blair by the party. Everybody said that if he wins he'll have no problem, because even those who were dubious about the way that he was controlling the party and leading it will give him the credit for the victory if they really win, and they've won so handsomely that the whole party for the moment is likely to be bound up in the victory. Neil Kinnock congratulating him, Mrs. Prescott congratulating him, John Prescott there, his deputy leader. New government, and no doubt he may be thinking a new dawn as the sun comes up over the South Bank on the River Thames at the Festival Hall, and the man who will tomorrow take on the burdens of office today celebrates his party's victory.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Well,
this is a man who's won the largest Labour majority ever, bigger than 1945 when they had 147 seats. This time it's heading for 183. An astonishing recovery for the party, and a tribute to the single-mindedness with which this man has pursued the aim of making his party acceptable and electable.
A new dawn has broken, has it not? And it is wonderful. We always said that if we had the courage to change, then we could do it, and we did it. And let me say this to you. The British people have put their trust in us. It is a moving and it is a humbling experience. And the size of our likely majority now imposes a special sort of responsibility upon us. We have been elected as New Labour, and we will govern as New Labour. We were elected because as a party today, we represent the whole of this nation. And we will govern for the whole of this nation, every single part of it. We will speak up for that decent, hard-working majority of the British people whose voice has been silent for all too long in our political life. And we'll set about doing the good, practical things that need to be done in this country. Extending educational opportunity not to an elite, but to all our children. Modernising our welfare state, rebuilding our National Health Service as a proper National Health Service to serve the needs of Britain. We will work with business to create that dynamic and enterprising economy we need, and we will work with all our people for that just and decent society that the British people have wanted for so long. This vote tonight has been a vote for the future, for a new era of politics in Britain, so that we can put behind us the battles of this past century and address the challenges of the new century. It will be a Britain renewed, where through education and technology and enterprise, we equip our country for the future in a different and new economic world, and where we build a nation united, with common purpose, shared values, with no one shut out, no one excluded, no one told that they do not matter. In that society, tolerance and respect will be the order of the day, as we watch our children grow in strength and our elderly rest easy and secure in old age. That is the country we have wanted for so long. A Britain whose politics starts once again to live up to the finest ideals of public service. And a Britain that stands tall in the world, whose sense of its future is as certain and confident as its sense of its own history. Today, on the eve of this new millennium, the British people have ushered in this new era of politics. And the great thing about it is that we have won support in this election from all walks of life, from all classes of people, from every single corner of our country. We are now today the People's Party. The party of all the people, the many, not the few, The party that belongs to every part of Britain, no matter what people's background or their creed or their colour. The party that can stand up for what is a great country. And I want everyone to feel proud in their country tonight because they all have a stake in its success. I believe in Britain, and tonight the people of Britain are uniting behind New Labour. They are uniting around basic British values, uniting to put the divisions of the past behind us, uniting to face the challenges of the future, uniting at long last as one nation. 3 days ago, I quoted one of my predecessors, John Smith. He said, all we ask is the chance to serve. Tonight, the British people have given us the chance to serve, and serve we will, with all our heart and all our mind. And to you, all of you that have come here this evening, I say thank you for all your work and for all your help. It's been a long journey for this party, has it not? It's been a long journey. I'm delighted that Neil Kinnock is here tonight as well. Neil took us back from the brink of extinction and helped make this party what it is today. And it is with real pride that we, all the people here, young and old from every part of the country, from every background, we say tonight, you, the British people, have given us the chance to serve you. You have put your trust in us, and we say to you, we shall repay that trust for you. We govern for you. Finally, all these years, we have been people saying but never given the chance to do. And yet the only purpose in being in politics is to do, to get things done, to make things happen. Now we have the chance to make things happen. And we take that responsibility upon us, and we say we shall discharge it, and we shall make this country as proud of us as tonight we are proud of them. Thank you very much indeed.
Tony Blair outside the festival hall on the South Bank, making a speech which he's made many times on the stump, slightly revamped for this victory moment. Not an emotional speech thanking all the party workers and supporters who've gathered there, but more a restatement of policy and intention with this huge majority. Sherry, his wife, Sherry Booth, the lawyer beside him, and an enthusiastic welcome from Labour Party workers and supporters who've come here in the early hours of the morning as the dawn breaks. Well, I don't know what you thought, Robin Oakley. I thought that was rather a slightly stilted way of dealing with a victory party. It's not at all what you'd expect, a sort of restatement of all the policy lines.
Well, I think Mr. Blair was very conscious that he was speaking to the nation outside, as well as to his own party workers.
Come on, pull the other one.
Assuming that they're all still watching us here, David, I'm sure he was conscious of that. But it's been... The whole Labour campaign has been one of careful reassurance. Remember that image that Roy Jenkins produced at the beginning of the campaign? There was Mr. Blair carrying this precious crystal vase along a long, slippery corridor. Well, he's got there to the end of the corridor with the crystal vase, and he didn't even then dare to do a little pirouette with it still in his hand.
There's something a bit sort of tight-laced or uptight about the way that they handle ideas and handle the sort of expression of it.
We did see him once or twice, though, towards the end of the campaign, out on the stump, cutting loose and getting some more emotion into it. But they've been conscious themselves, I think, of how it has been a rather safety-first campaign. We suddenly got this colour purple creeping into Labour's advertisements and background and so on, and that was, they said, to symbolise the passion that was behind it all. But they've had to be so disciplined in order to get where they have, to create new Labour and to convince the public they have changed.
Certainly the crowd there is very exuberant as John Prescott, Tony Blair walked down being congratulated by the crowd. It's not until tomorrow morning, round about midday, that he goes to the palace to, in the formal expression, kiss hands with the Queen and take over as Prime Minister. Tony King.
I think one of the reasons that...
Just a second, we have the arrival of John Major down at Smith Square. And this is the headquarters of the Conservative Party. Party workers who've been busy planning and plotting their campaign and have faced a defeat on a really quite dramatic scale tonight. We expect Mr. Major to speak to the party workers here before going back for the last time to number 10. Meets Michael Portillo, who's been defeated tonight. Alan Duncan, who is one of his close supporters during the campaign. Sympathy for Mr. Major, who's always been rather admired by the people who come in contact with him in the party. Now we expect him to speak.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, above all, for all you've done in the last few weeks and the last few months. I know how hard so many of you have worked. I know how much you have sacrificed, given up, hoped, dreamed for a different result and a different outcome tonight. It hasn't proved that way. I don't think there was much that we left undone that we could have done. There are some times in politics when the ball just rolls in the opposite direction and there isn't a great deal that you can do about it. I don't think it is in our best interests to spend our time in the immediate future doing anything other than preparing for what lies ahead, not just in the short term, but in the medium term. Politics is a rough old trade. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But when you don't, you just step back, ask yourself why you didn't, and put yourself in a position to make sure that next time...
Yes.
Next time.
Tory telecom reforms.
That next time you get it right, and you do win. I've been in the Conservative Party for as long as I can remember. I guess many of the people in this room joined the Conservative Party as soon as they could as well. And we joined it for the same reasons. We didn't join it just for the nights when you win, just for the easy victories from time to time. We didn't join it for the office. We didn't join it for the spoils. We joined it because we care about what it stands for, and we care about what it can do for this country. Now, we have been in being as a party for longer than any other democratic party in Western Europe. We've won more elections. We've lost a few on the route. But we've won more elections and we have perhaps served in government longer, more often, and better in the interests of our country than any other democratic. And we will do so again. Tonight we have suffered a very bad defeat. Let us not pretend to ourselves it was anything other than what it was. Unless we accept it for what it was and look at it, we will be less able to put it right. We've lost some very good servants of the party, people who've devoted a huge amount of their life to the service of this country and the service of this party. We've lost, temporarily I hope, some colleagues, both senior and not so senior, who still have a lot of service to give this country and this party and who will, I hope, be back where they should be, in the House of Commons, serving us all. And they lost, from what I saw of it, with a dignity that made me as proud of this party as I have been of. We now have a job to do, all of us.
It's those reforms again, John, it's those reforms again.
They tell me the technological age is a good thing. Forgive me if from time to time I just have a small leave to doubt whether that is absolutely entirely true. We'll have to regroup. We'll have to sit back. I hope everybody will go away, have a rest. You've earned it. Not for too long. And then we'll begin to work again. There's a job to do in opposition. To be in opposition in Parliament is a pretty honourable way of life. To make sure that the government of the day is kept under close scrutiny. We'll deal fairly. If they do what we think is right for our country, we'll support them. If they do what we think is wrong for our country, then we'll oppose them as vigorously as we can with every member we have and every party worker we have up and down the country. So I know tonight is not a light night for cheers and champagne for us. It's a night perhaps to look back, I hope with some pride, at the changes that we have made to our country in the last 18 years. I first entered Parliament 18 years ago tomorrow, I think. And the difference in our country is a difference you could not express unless you remembered what it was like in May of 1979 when the Conservatives first came to government. Many people who voted in this general election perhaps never knew that, for they have never known anything in their adult lives but Conservative government. And others perhaps have not remembered precisely what it was like. Well, I said a moment ago that this party had served longer in government than any other. We've suffered great defeats before. We have always come back. We have always come back. And we have always come back because there is something in the Conservative philosophy and the Conservative instinct that runs absolutely with the grain of the British instinct. We must make sure we rediscover that, not just in the interests of our party, but in the interests of our country. So there is a great deal of work to do. I would just say three final things. Firstly, perhaps I can reiterate to this group here all these faces I've come to know so well, in some cases over many years, in some cases more recently. If you will forgive me repeating something I said a little earlier, and you may possibly have seen, I think perhaps here of all places is a good place to pay tribute to some of the people who have done so much to help over recent years. The party chairman, not here now, but on his way here, and I hope shortly here. Those of our colleagues whom we have lost, and on a more personal basis, though I have temporarily mislaid her, Norma. So, right, okay, we lost. So we... Go
on, John.
So go away for the weekend, relax, fire yourself up again, and then come back. Because when you come back, at the beginning of next week, we've got a job, and we better start doing it then. Thank you very much.
The Prime Minister at Smith Square, absolutely no sign of, or no indication rather, that he's thinking of stepping down, talking about getting on with a job of recovery as he goes up the stairs there where Mrs. Thatcher stood and said they were going to win the cities after the election in '87. So John Major making a speech thanking them all, saying quite frankly they'd lost, but as I say, no indication that he's thinking of standing down. We don't know what he'll do. Now, Peter, let's have a look at how this victory has been won by Labour, where it was won, how it was won, and the scale of it.
The job John Major has to do to win back the country is really quite dramatic, and it's even more frightening for the Tories when you look at details like this, for example. Mr. Blair's great pitch was to win Middle England. And look what he's done. In working class seats, 9% the swing was there, whereas in the middle class seats, in Middle England seats, suburban seats, the seats where all these vital marginal areas were, a 12%, a massive 12% swing. That's twice the biggest swing we've had by any part of the nation since the war, a 12% swing in those middle class seats. Look also at the regional spread of the vote. Now, this is the lead in 1992, Labour's lead in Scotland, the North and Wales, a huge Tory lead in that fortress in the South, Midlands and London. Labour's never won a general election without winning a majority of the vote in London. Now look what's happened this time. Look how the lead has, of course, jumped in Scotland, the North and Wales, but in the Midlands, critical, Middle England, 12% lead for Labour. In London, an 18% lead for Labour. There are going to be 11 Conservative MPs left in London, all the 74 MPs. Only 1/7 of them will be Tories. In the South, that fortress of conservatism, that huge area all the way around and down, Surrey, Sussex, right the way along, only a 9% Conservative lead left there. Now let's just look at how this landscape has changed so dramatically for the Conservatives. Here are half all the seats in Britain were Conservative in 1992, represented here by their majorities, huge, great columns of blue, some of them very tall, some of them very small, like this one here, that represents a very tight seat in Brecon and Radnorshire, and that was one that was easy for the opposition to gain. But let's just shape these towers of blue regionally so that we can see them, where we've kept them at their proportions to show you what the majorities were. Here, for example, is Kensington and Chelsea, the safest seat of all in London. And now we'll have a look now at them region by region. We're going to go region by region now and just look at them. And we're going to start with Scotland over here. And here you see the effect of Labour's attack on Scotland. No MPs left for the Tories there at all. In the north, nobody left in the marginal seats down the bottom, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats making a huge assault on the Highlands up there. Here we have the Midlands and Wales, and very few of the foothills left, one or two of them there, but the opposition attack reaching right up into the higher parts there, London, and the same thing in the south. David, back to you.
Peter, let's go down to Falmouth and Camborne. Sebastian Coe there, the Olympic middle distance gold medal winner, and a mass of candidates that he attracted to this seat where his majority was 3,200 or so. There's Peter de Savary, standing for the referendum party, the millionaire or maybe billionaire, I don't know which.
1,691. Glitter, Gary, official Monster Raving Loony Party, 161. Holmes, Paul Thomas, Liberal, 527. Jones, Terry Lynn, Liberal Democrat, 13,512. Luorn, Ruth, Mevian Kerno, 238.
It's the Cornish Independence
Smith,
Party.
Robert Lee, UK Independence Party, 355. And that Candice Kathleen Atherton has been duly elected to serve as member for the Falmouth and Camborne constituency.
So the former mayor of Islington down there in Cornwall takes the seat, going from third place to top, and Sebastian Coe is defeated, his majority of 3,200 overturned by a majority of just under 3,000. Now let's go back to you, Peter, because we were stopped halfway through.
Yeah, well, we're just looking at these mountain tops of Conservative strength here. There's London with Kensington and Chelsea. I can't reach the top of Alan Clark's seat. He's just survived. As you can see, the opposition attack has gone right up here into the foothills, into the mountains, but not the very heights up there. There, by the way, I forgot to mention, we went past this Tatton, Martin Bell's success in the safest seat of all in the Tory North. And now we come finally across here to the south. This is the great stronghold of Toryism. What's Labour's and the Liberal Democrats attack down there? There's the onslaught going right up through the foothills into the much safer seats, even gaining some of these heights up here, but not, of course, seats like Beaconsfield right up at the top here. And let's just now look at the whole new landscape of Britain and see how the colour has dramatically changed. The swings have been getting greater and greater as you move towards the south. That's why here in London you have this devastation of Tory strength in London, only 11 seats left there for the Tories. Down here in the south, 90 seats left for the Tories, 53 down on where they were before. And so the new pattern of Britain, the new landscape of Britain, is very little blue left compared to what it was. And there you see the number of losses they've suffered right the way across all the regions. 178 losses probably altogether in this election, with one or two seats still to come. I'm not quite certain about that number. It looks like 178, the worst since 1900 or so. David.
Thanks, Peter. Jeremy Hanley, former chairman of the party, former Northern Ireland minister, defeated in Richmond Park by Jenny Tong, the Liberal Democrat. After many battles, the Liberal Democrats trying to take that seat. And this is how Jeremy Hanley responded to his defeat.
If more Conservatives were like John Major, if they'd fought as honourable a battle and put their country first, as John Major has done, in trying to recover this nation from the depths that it was in before, we would have done far better. If we had stuck together as a party, far better, and followed John Major's leadership, we would have done better.
Jeremy Hanley there. And now we go to Covent Garden early this morning, to the piazza, where Krishnan Gurumurthy has some people with him responding to this. No, the Covent Garden Market, it looks like, rather than the piazza.
That's
anyway,
right.
Krishnan.
Good morning, David. Well, they said New Labour, New Britain, so we came to New Covent Garden, where the people here were among the first to wake up to the end of Conservative rule. Morris, did you get what you wanted?
Yeah, I did actually, yes, I did.
And what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to an equal kind of attitude to the way the country's run. I believe the way the Tories have dominated over the last, 17 years, I think it's a good day for democracy. And me personally, on a personal issue, I've been to experience the national health system through illnesses and one thing and the other, and it's absolutely disgusting. On that issue alone, I've certainly gone towards Labour. I have voted Tory the election before last, but last one and this one's been Labour.
All right, well, David, do you share his view?
Not at all, no. Tory man through and through. Ted Heath, my local man. Thank goodness he got in. But Tony Blair says no income tax change, that's good. Don't change the VAT and look after the small businessman.
Well, Tim, what about you?
I go along with my brother there. I think that...
What do you think is really going to change? What's really going to be good about Britain under a Labour government?
Well, I think people will be going to be sort of better off with the education and with transport. I think they'll put a lot of money into transport in the underground, British Rail. I think they should maybe nationalise that again.
Well, lots to look forward to, maybe. Yes. Gentlemen, thank you very much. David.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krishnan. Jeremy.
David, well, I'm joined now by Stephen Dorrell, the Health Secretary. Stephen Dorrell, I don't know whether you heard the Prime Minister's speech at Central Office. He didn't sound like a man who wanted to go on, did he?
He was a man, I think, who was setting out clearly the priority which the Conservative Party now faces. And that's a priority to ensure that whenever Prime Minister Blair looks into his mirror, he sees a credible, attractive, alternative government looking over his shoulder. It's the task of the opposition to call the government to account and to present an alternative way of dealing with the nation's problems. That's the challenge that the Conservative Party now faces.
Under a new leader, presumably?
Well, I think the leadership question is frankly a secondary question.
Okay.
What's a primary question is the importance of the Conservative Party re-establishing the coalition of interest on the centre-right of politics, where I believe the majority view in Britain still rests.
Do you share the view of the Tory Reform Group that you were scuppered by the activities of the right wing?
I don't believe that the language that the Tory Reform Group used is in any way helpful at this stage in the developments. What I think we need to do is to sit down in a quiet and calm way to look at the lessons that are to be drawn from this general election campaign and ensure that we build a party that is true to its traditions as the longest established democratic political party anywhere in Europe.
But you're talking about sorting yourself out maybe late this year, early next, something like that?
I'm talking about starting on Monday morning, as John Major made clear in his speech in Central Office. This is a task. The moment one election is over, whether you win it or lose it, a democratic political party ought to be then thinking about the way forward, its objectives, what it stands for, what it means to argue for, and how it means to deliver them.
Mr. Dorrell, thank you very much.
The time to start that is next week.
Mr. Dorrell, thank you.
Let's just catch up on what's been going on in Scotland and have a summary of the news from there with Jane Frankie. Jane.
Thanks, David. Well, in effect, as Sir David Steele said earlier, the Scottish Liberal Democrats are the opposition party in Scotland tonight. They have 9 seats. The Scottish National Party have 6. Labour have 56. The Tories have lost all theirs. Even the jubilant Shadow Scottish Secretary George Robertson acknowledged that they couldn't believe it when they saw all the Tory seats and their high-profile incumbents fall as they did like ninepins. It means, presumably, that English MPs will make up the front bench on the opposition benches during Scottish questions on the Scottish Grand Committee. An extraordinary situation. The Scottish nationalists, while doubling their seat total, really didn't make any breakthrough into the Labour stronghold that they were trying to do, although their big scalp of the night, of course, was Ian Lang, the President of the Board of Trade. But our new Labour MPs do include some pioneers. Mohammed Sarwar, who won Glasgow Govan, will be the first Muslim MP in Parliament, and Anne Begg, who won Aberdeen South, will be the first wheelchair-bound Member of Parliament. There's 1 seat left to declare up here tonight. It's almost certain to stay with the Liberal Democrats, but the main story north of the border is that for the first time since 1832, Scotland has no Tory MPs.
Thanks very much, Jane. Well, let's just have a final reminder this morning of how things stand. This is the state of the parties. We've still got 35 results to come in, but at the moment, with 624 declared, Labour is on 416, up 145, well over that 330 they needed to have a majority in the new House of Commons. The Conservatives way down on 157, minus 174. 174 net losses. The Liberal Democrats on 40, and the Nationalists on 3, others on 1. Based on those 624 results we've had in so far, a Labour majority of 179 is predicted, the biggest ever and the largest swing that Labour's had since 1945 in the tail end of the Second World War. The lowest Conservative number of seats now since 1906, and the party facing wipeout in Scotland and Wales. For the Liberal Democrats, they're heading for the highest number of seats for a third party since 1929. They've had a good night in terms of the seats they've had. And here are the highlights of the night and the declarations and the stories of success and defeat that we've heard. Well, the end of a most dramatic night in British politics, which has seen the virtual wipeout of the Tory party in Britain. Tony Blair going with a huge majority to the palace tomorrow to become Prime Minister. Join us at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning and we'll have all the news then. From all of us here, good night.
For 1 week only, we're offering you two Match of the Days for one. We asked 3 ordinary people what they thought.
It's a big day for the fans, the players, and indeed managers.
And you, sir, happy to watch Des and Allen twice in a day?
I've seen both of them quite a lot last month.
Really not impressed then?
Well, I must say I enjoyed watching them.
That's better. And what about new added Motson?
His ability to pick up players was terrific today.
So, thumbs up for two Match of the Days tomorrow only at the new improved times of 5:35 and 11:30. Offer available while shots last. Teams can go up as well as down.
Now the headlines from the Look North newsroom this Friday morning. Landslide as Labour sweep to power across Yorkshire. The Tories lick their wounds after losing seat after seat. Hello, good morning. The political map of the region has been transformed beyond recognition after a massive Labour landslide. Before last night, this was how the region looked, with huge swathes of Tory blue. But last night, there was a massive swing to Labour and the Liberal Democrats. This morning, Labour have 50 seats, that's up 12. The Tories have 9, down 14, and the Liberal Democrats have 2. Well, it was a miserable night to be a Conservative supporter in the region. More than a dozen seats were lost and some key figures defeated.
Of all the scalps Labour didn't expect to take, Sir Marcus Fox, 27 years an MP, was the region's most spectacular.
Leslie Christopher Michael, 22,000.
Chris Leslie, the David who knocked out this political Goliath with a swing of nearly 14%, is just 24 years old.
I am so proud to be elected today.
I'm just saddened that the success that we've achieved, and we're just now coming through, that another party is going to get the benefit from it.
Also among the casualties in the Conservative meltdown, Keith Hampson in Leeds North West. Labour's Harold Best leapfrogged over the Liberal Democrats from third place to a comfortable first. Ronnie the Rhino lost his deposit. Compared with these, it was child's play to end Elizabeth Peacock's 14-year tenure of Batley and Spen. A triumphant Mike Wood romped home with a lower swing but a 6,000 majority. And in redrawn Cleethorpes, Shona McIsaac is Labour's new woman, ending Michael Brown.